I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to first begin by just reminding everybody that the meeting is being recorded and respectfully ask that you silence your cell phones. Just as a point of record, Mr. Teresi is unable to be here tonight, and Mr. Gross is traveling at the moment, so he is participating via remote connection, and hopefully he is more audible than he was the last time. So thank you. And yeah, very good. I'd also like to welcome North Andover's Boy Scouts Troops 82 and 87 for being in attendance tonight. So thank you and welcome. And we will start with public comment. If there's any public comment. All right. We'll go on to our students, Matt and Courtney.
All right, hello everyone. Winding down trimester 2 at North Andover, so students are really getting that last push to get their grade as high as possible heading into finals. For most seniors, trying to get their way out of finals by having above a 90, so that's huge for the seniors. Gives them that motivation to keep on working hard. Winter sports are also coming to an end. I would like to congratulate all the seniors on everything that they've done for the athletic program. We have the girls basketball team who will be in the state tournament coming this weekend, so it's a great accomplishment for them. That's pretty much a regular thing for them to be in the state tournament. Also in the North Andover athletic program, we have boys volleyball starting up, which is a new sport for North Andover High School, so that's big, and that's going to be run by one of the gym teachers at school, Mr. Pizzo. So hopefully that all works out well and has a good turnout for the spring sports. We also have our students who are currently on the Spanish exchange, and based off all their social media posts and everything, looks like they're having a great time. But they're going to be facing harsh reality coming back to North Andover tomorrow and starting back with school. We had a great number of students who went into the Dominican Republic for a service trip. So they did phenomenal things down there, and they said it was a very life-changing experience for them.
Yep, and the National Honor Society ceremony induction ceremony will be taking place next Monday, or this Monday because it's the next one after. And I would like to point out a new club, Be the Phoenix, run by Mrs. Flynn, and it's like an awareness club, but I feel like this club is very special because it's like personal experiences from teachers that we know, like, and people that we can like connect with other than like watching videos online by like celebrities or anything. It's more like a personal type of thing, and I think it's highly appreciated.
I'd also like to recognize North Andover graduate Joe Guggenberger for being accepted into the the United States Naval Academy, which is a tremendous honor for them. Cool. And yeah, awesome. That's about it.
All right. Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Have a nice night.
Have a good weekend.
Question maybe for our superintendent. It would be great if we could get some update from those who did attend the service event in South America. That was a new program. It'd be great to get some first-hand feedback on how that went.
Yeah, I already have them scheduled for March 24th. We're thinking alike there, Mr. Gross.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our consent agenda, which is 4A, accept the donation from the PTOs for the demo model classrooms.
Chris Farr is here representing the PTO co-presidents. PTO co-president from Sargent, so she was going to just come up and quickly talk a little bit about that, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
She got everyone else stepped back this morning at our meeting, so she got to come.
I didn't know what she was asking when she said, "Are you coming tonight?" And I had told Joan I wasn't coming, so here I am.
Short straw.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So thank you for being here.
Thanks. So in collaboration with the district and with the schools and the PTOs, we've decided over the next 2 years to do model classrooms. So we're doing we just did demo classrooms in each of the schools. So all of the elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school all now have demo classrooms set up. So the PTOs have each written out checks to cover the document cameras and the projectors and the Chromecast so that they'll be accessible for the schools to see. So in raising funds to go forward for the rest of the project.
And I'm really excited about this in that it was really a joint effort of all
Yes.
the PTOs. I mean, we've all come together, we've all worked together. You'll notice that each district, each school has a different amount, which could have created tension, but it just didn't. It was like about getting every classroom to where it needs to be. So I really appreciate that we're all together on this. It's been a really good way for us to begin, I hope, our relationship around
I
a
agree.
really concrete example of what we need for our schools.
What does this particular donation cover? Is this some?
This is just the demo classrooms, so we've set up demo classrooms 1 or 2 in every school. I met with the demo classroom teachers yesterday afternoon, and it was just exciting to see. But in every school, there is a full demo classroom of what it will look like, which has been an opportunity to work out the kinks, and then also to create some excitement in each of the schools. And the teachers have all reported in very short amount of time, it's made a significant difference in teaching and learning.
And are these classrooms that then teachers can go and other teachers can go?
Yes,
and-
so we
That's
basically looked for folks who are willing to kind of have their classroom be opened up. They've been talking to parents. They've been doing additional PD above and beyond the school day. So teachers who are kind of willing to go above and beyond. The goal for next year is to have all classrooms 3 through 5 outfitted, half of the classrooms at the middle school and half of the classrooms at the high school. And we're very confident, I think that's fair to say, we're very confident that we're going to be able to get to that. So when schools opens up in September, we should have half of the academic classrooms in our buildings ready to go, with the goal of having all academic classrooms ready to go by September 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the PTOs are working very well together collaboratively to be able to raise the funds.
So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I think this is an amazing effort, and that it's come together so quickly is really wonderful. And the fact that the PTOs, I mean, this is money that you've worked really hard to earn across the district. So thank you for putting it towards the classrooms. And I wonder too, I think this is fabulous. Is there a way to maybe get some video of some of these classrooms onto North Andover CAM where we're trying to spearhead in the community to get donations, maybe seeing what they're doing?
I don't know if, I've sent out a number of Twitter posts about the classrooms, but I think that's a good idea. We got to think about how, I don't know if North Andover CAM's the right place, but I'll talk to them about it. I did do a piece, Mike Grant and I did a piece on North Andover CAM about it during my journal segment last time, so we talked all about it. So we have worked with them. We also, there's more to come, but we worked with an educational a group to help us get our social media presence going, and we were talking to them about pictures and testimony from teachers. So we are working on kind of letting people know about it.
But to Ms. Warren's point, it might be nice for the public to see what we're talking about.
So I did do a piece on the North Andover CAM, and I also wrote a pretty extensive piece in your tax bill that comes out about it.
Well, I think it's wonderful to have you on the CAM, but I think when they see kids and things, and I think it might pull people
Yeah,
more to participate.
Yeah, we could do something with that. But we have tried to kind of get it out.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is fantastic, and just
Thank you.
really appreciate the collaborative effort, so that's great. So I would now entertain a motion to accept as presented the $12,160 donation from the school PTOs and PACs to fund the model classroom.
So, go ahead.
So moved.
Second?
And I'll do a roll call vote. Mrs. Warren?
Yes.
Mr. Limper?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes,
And I am a yes, so
and
4
thank
to
you very
0.
much.
All right. Thank you again. All right, so we will now move on to 4B, which is the approval of the minutes, and it is meetings from January 28th and February 4th. And I believe all of our attendees were,
I wasn't at the 4th.
okay, so let's do these separately, you're right, okay.
So move to accept the minutes from the January 28th, 2016 meeting?
Second?
Seconded.
Okay, any comments, corrections?
Good.
All right, so I will call the vote for the minutes from January 28th. Mrs. Warren?
Yes.
Mr. Limper?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
And I am yes, so 4-0. And February 4th, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Okay, any updates or corrections?
Nope. We're good.
All right, Mrs. Warren?
She has to abstain.
I'm sorry?
You weren't at that meeting.
You weren't at that meeting, are you
Right.
abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Limper?
Yes.
Mr. Gross?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so we are 3-0-1 with Mrs. Warren being the abstention. Okay, excellent. All right, so we will now move on to the chair's report. A couple of different things that I wanted to bring up tonight. First of all, I thank Mr. Gross for traveling again so I could come back. Our next meeting is actually on March 7th, and that is Monday, which is a break from our traditional meeting schedule. And we are doing that in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen. So we are still meeting at 6:30?
6:45.
6:45, okay. So we're meeting at 6:45 again in this room because Town Hall is under construction as well. The purpose of that meeting is we are having Bill Meehan from the McHaley Center. Did I say that correctly?
You're doing well.
All right. From the McHaley Center, who is going to present the concussion study and the impact of that, and the potential planning for that. And it was really an opportunity for us to bring the Board of Selectmen and the school committee together as one, so that we had all of the attendees really only having to come to North Andover once. This is an incredible opportunity that we want to have more people in the community kind of understand and know what's happening, and so it really just gave us that opportunity to allow them to really come here one time only. And Dr. Price, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, this is a youth wellness study that we're very excited that the McHaley Center is affiliated with Harvard University and Children's Hospital, and they're looking for a town to partner with and are asking North Andover to partner with them. So I'm very excited that they're coming, and I think we're meeting with both the Board of Selectmen and the school committee to make sure we understand what the partnership would look like. We're also going to add not only trying to create physically fit kids, but it's also around financial fitness. And we have, you'll hear tonight about one of our initiatives around financial literacy. And the Board of Fit Money, which is actually the group that is spearheading that, will also be present to talk about their work. So it'll be an opportunity to have some outside folks coming in and talking about how they want to partner with North Andover. So do encourage people to tune in, and I'm excited. I really do appreciate that especially the school committee was willing to kind of move their schedules around to be here. But asking folks to come twice was just, I wasn't making it happen.
Is the expectation that the two boards would then vote on this, or what?
I know, I think it's more of an informational,
Okay.
I think if there were any major concerns, we would want to hear that.
Okay.
But it's really an opportunity to get questions asked, and
it's youth.
it's youth.
Okay.
It's all
Not-
youth.
Okay. Not the general population.
This isn't something that we'll vote on.
No.
Okay.
It's just
information.
informational to understand what we're doing.
Okay.
Will there be any information distributed to the two boards prior to the meeting? Kind of a read-ahead thing?
I don't know, but I can ask.
Just saying.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
I understand. You always do.
It's an impressive group.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not. I hate to commit for other people that don't work for the school system, but I will do my best.
Well, it's just, we can ask, right?
Yes, and I will ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, as a result of meeting on the 7th, we are actually going to cancel our meeting on the 10th. So we only have one meeting that week, and that next meeting, the minutes or the agenda is actually incorrect. It will be March 24th.
Yep.
So we will go from the 7th to the 24th. That'll be our next
Is
meeting.
we're not going to be doing any other school committee business?
No, it's just because the Board of Selectmen will be continuing their meeting in this room.
Right.
Okay. Understand.
And just to clarify, there was something else on our agenda that needed to be addressed next week.
Correct.
Correct, because the major issue on the agenda was the revolving accounts, which we already approved during the budget process.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to just provide a quick intro, and then Mr. Gross, if you want to add some color commentary. We are also exploring the possibility of consolidation of legal counsel between the town and the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. So there is a dream team, if you will, kind of put together to help determine that process and to select legal counsel and try to move forward for that. And that will be made up of town manager Andrew Mailer, Dr. Price, Kathy Darby from the town's HR department, Mr. Gross as chairman of the school committee, Mrs. Tracy Watson as chairwoman of the Board of Selectmen, and then one additional member of each of the school committee and the Board of Selectmen as well. So that has been something that I know we've started to talk about as we have done more initiatives to try to bring town and school committee budgets and duties together. So we are taking some additional steps on that. So, Mr. Gross, I don't know if you have anything.
Thank you, Mr. Devitt. And we'll summarize. Bottom line is I had that conversation, and she is full agreement, as am I. The town manager has forwarded a proposal, which essentially is that will circulate the job description, and we'll have an opportunity to review that, provide input and comment. And once we have a suitable number of candidates, there will be eventually a face-to-face meeting with the candidates and the representatives of both the school and Board of Selectmen groups. And hopefully we'll be in a position to have a joint council from that. This does not replace all council for this committee. We obviously have many needs in special ed and other areas, but this will give us, as Dr. Price indicated during the budget session, a great cost savings and shared resource within the town that we do expect to work forward toward. I am looking forward to hearing from the other members of the school committee, that is, on their interest. And again, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a burdensome or lengthy process. I'm confident that I'll have the bandwidth, given that the town manager indicates he would like this to be in place, I believe he said, in July, August time period, that we might be able to have the actual appointment made. So if there are members of the school committee who are interested in serving in the other second position, and Mr. Teresi had voiced interest, but I would like to hear from others if there is interest, and we'll figure out how we'll make that second appointment. Okay?
Okay. Mr. Gross, can you, are you in a position to begin distributing to us some of the information you've gotten from the town manager on the process?
I certainly can forward the summary he sent to me earlier this week or last week, but it's fairly succinct, and as I said, as always, Mr. Mailer has a well thought out process, so I'll be happy to share that with the rest of the school committee.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Gross?
No, that's it. Looking forward to hearing from the rest of the school committee on their interest in that, and obviously with Ms. Watson on the scheduling for a review of the proposal, of the job description.
Perfect. All right, and the last thing that I have, which I don't know if the school committee has actually seen, but they have picked the date for the naming and the dedication of the Alexander P. Farisi track, which is May 15th. And so I believe that is the day that they are doing the youth track meet, as well as the dedication for that.
Say again, May 15th?
May 15th.
May 15th.
And that is all I have. So we will now move forward to your report, Dr. Price.
Yeah, the first thing I have to report is I'm excited to announce that Governor Baker will be visiting North Andover on Wednesday of next week, going to the Kittredge Elementary School for their Read Across America assembly at 10 a.m. So we are very excited to be hosting the governor, and he will be reading a Dr. Seuss book at Kittredge, and then taking an opportunity to walk around the school and visit some classrooms. So it's an exciting time for North Andover, and specifically for Kittredge. And I sent to the school committee, you're all invited to attend if you so desire. And then just a few other items, and I sent these to you in advance. So you had asked me to go and think about elementary school parent-teacher conferences, and I went to the elementary school principals, and you'll see that we actually have a recommendation here, which in short is that next year our proposal is to do parent-teacher conferences at the elementary school level on Election Day. And actually take that full day and allow parents to come in on Election Day, days I hope that they're voting, and do a full day of conferences rather than spreading them out over 2 days and having 2 early releases.
2 half-days, right?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay,
2 half-days. And that our hope is that I'll give more time for elementary school teachers to have the conferences, because one of the challenges has been that even though they've taken those 2 half-days, often because of the class sizes, they're actually going beyond that. So this would hopefully create more time and would be 1 day. We are aware that it is only a 1-year solution because we do not have a presidential election every year. But our thought is, no comments. But we thought it would be a good year to pilot a 1 full day, and see if it works and get feedback from both the teachers and from the parents about whether this was a better model. So
Will there also be evening hours?
it would just be the school day.
Okay.
Because obviously, so this is just something you had asked us to think about. I just came back saying that we're thinking pretty strongly about this one.
This is great, and I think, for parents in the community that then kind of have to juggle a little bit of those 2 half-days, this is a really good solution. So hopefully it's received well, and then we can kind of figure out what to do in the other 3 years outside of the election. But what about middle school and the possibility to explore that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I haven't had the time to really work with Dr. McQuaid and the staff about that, but we are going, but we will do so. And
we truly recognize the need. We're big.
Yeah. So,
we
but
definitely recognize the need.
But I would say by March 24th, we could have some plan about that would be viable. I will say that high school is not going to be viable because the reason we're shutting down for the day is so that there's no one at the high school so that we can have voting. The other challenge with the high school is given the trimester system, it's a bit of a challenge. So I'm absolutely, Joan, you and I can have a conversation and come up with something by the 24th. But high school really would not be an option because of the voting.
Absolutely, yeah. I think for a lot of families, and myself included, kind of first year going into the middle school, you're not sure where to go, how things work, and it's probably 2 months into the school year or so that may, timing-wise, be a good welcoming.
And we actually liked moving it back to November. We felt that October was actually too early, especially for anyone who was visiting a specials or an elective or something like that. They had barely seen the kids.
Yep, I would agree.
So our feeling was this was better timing. So our thought is, we would want to. Our thought is to move forward on this, but we need to do a little bit more work before we agree to it. Just want to bring it to you first.
Great. I think this is wonderful, and I love the fact that it's pushed back. I think it gives the teachers and the students more opportunity to get to know each other before conferences, which is fabulous. So thank you for taking the time to think about this. I'm going to still throw out that I would love to see the addition of a spring conference and a time to check in as the year progresses and children change, and I think it'd be a nice opportunity to check back in. I know that right now it's not on the table, at least in the current what they have to do with conferences, but I think this is a great first step. So thank you so much for working on this.
Yeah, I would like to thank the elementary school principals. They really did the work on this. Okay. Next item, I just wanted to let you know about, as you can imagine with the kind of record turnout that's been happening with the presidential primary, we're a little anxious about the reality that the North Andover High School is going to be going full speed on presidential primary day, and residents of North Andover are going to be voting at North Andover High School. So Dr. Scazzarella, I think very smartly, recommended that we do a 1-hour delay on presidential primary day, which is March 1st, for the high school, so that the students would actually not be coming in until about 8:43, about 8:43. I love high school times, don't you love it? 8:43.
They'll love it too.
But give them an extra hour, give them an hour delay, which would allow voters who are voting before going to work to be able to come in, get in and out, and it would allow us to really have a much more kind of in the morning, and then because it's actually in between sports seasons, there will be no afternoon activities. So really, our hours of challenge will kind of be like around 9 to about 2. Buses will run at their normal time because we can't just change the buses for one. So if kids are coming in on the bus, they'll go into the cafeteria and have the opportunity to get some breakfast and do some homework. Buses aren't really a concern because it's one vehicle. It's really just kind of the full vehicles coming in. I've cleared this with the town manager and Joyce Bradshaw. They both think it's a fabulous idea and really thank us for our creativity. I think it could potentially alleviate some pretty big tension in the morning as people are trying to vote before they get to work. So I just wanted to inform you that we're going to be doing a 1-hour delay on that day at the high school only.
Do you know offhand what time polling starts that day? Is it 7?
7 a.m.
7 a.m.
7 a.m., okay.
So that'll give us an hour and a half kind of free.
Morning rush.
Morning rush. People can
Right.
come in and vote and not have the deluge of all the drivers.
Okay. Yeah, that's
That's
always,
great. Thank
that's a
you.
challenge, and the parking is always a
Yeah, and we've
huge
got,
logistical.
and we've got this. There's a whole parking plan where we're telling the students they need to carpool, and there's only going to be so much limited parking, and we'll keep telling them that, and we'll see how much they follow that. But we're going to do our best.
There you go.
Said like a former high school principal.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. The next thing is I wanted to alert you to a few things. First of all, I wanted you to know formally that Leanne Carbone, our Director of Special Education, has made the decision to retire at the end of this school year. And we are saddened by that. She's just been an incredible leader for this district, and I think, and when you talk to anyone about it, has been an incredible stabilizing force in a place that felt just quite unstable prior to her arrival. And she's made the decision to retire. We're supportive of that because we support her, and that's about as far as we're supportive of that, but that's because we support her. Given that, I wanted to draw your attention to something that I have done as a result, which is to pretty dramatically change the job description of this job. One of the moves that is really happening in a lot of districts is to not have special education be its own entity, but really to have a director of student services, which incorporates, and as this job restriction, special education, guidance, counseling, 504s, kind of the whole gamut of the social, emotional support and health for students. And it's really kind of this philosophy of special education should not be its own kind of entity. It should be about supporting all kids and
Right.
the true definition of inclusion. So we've redrafted this job description. I'd like to point out that Dorsey Yearly, who's the consultant we've brought in to help, was instrumental in helping this. She's worked with tons of districts. And so the idea here is we've drafted it to kind of be a much more expansive, and it's been posted, it's out, it closes on March 7th. I will tell you, we have been incredibly aggressive on the timeline because we are up against a number of other districts, and I do not want to lose qualified candidates because we are slower.
You posted this job description?
Yes,
Okay.
this job description, the one, and I redlined it for you. And we posted it last week with a close date of March 7th. A number of other districts have similar close dates, and I absolutely know I am competing with those districts. So, I did also want to kind of foreshadow to you the possibility that if, in order to get a candidate of the caliber that I'm really hoping we're going to be able to attract to North Andover, because this is a big job, I may be coming to you to actually change this to an assistant superintendent for student services so that we could be able to compensate that person and give that person a title. I do know, for example, that a number of assistant superintendents are actually thinking of applying for this position, so for them to kind of be, and I really think in a district the size of North Andover, having an assistant superintendent for student services is a smart move.
Absolutely.
But I made the decision to post it as a director of student services. If we are not able to attract somebody who is at the level of an assistant superintendent, I felt we could then we would have it as director. We could always move up. It would be harder to kind of retract the position back to a director. So I've posted it as a director. My hope, very straightforward with you, is to have a candidate for you by March 24th. That is the aggressive nature I'm going on this one. I think we will lose people if we don't, but I want to make sure that I'm foreshadowing for you that it might be coming forward. I just want to remind you that I put a contingency of $27,000 in the budget when I did the budget, which part of it was me saying if I needed those funds to attract the candidate for the HR position, this would also be able to use those funds. So it would not impact our overall budget. I had already kind of earmarked some money to make sure we can get the right person for these positions.
This is different from HR.
Correct. We do have a contingency built into our budget just for issues like this.
Okay. May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
And Dr. Price,
In a minute.
I appreciate that this is a bigger scope, and I think that's an appropriate way to approach the problem, to start with the director level if we get the candidate ready. If not, then we have some headspace to bring the right candidate in. So thank you for this flexibility.
Mr. Winther?
So I have two questions. First is the concept of student services, where you roll everything together. My concern is we've in our district had problems with guidance all along. Mm-hmm. And my concern is that this runs the risk of, again, sort of making that now a secondary function for this person, because special education always has a tendency to overwhelm everything else when stuff happens. So my concern is by folding in guidance, which is not a bad idea conceptually, it will not receive the attention that we might want to give it because it gets overwhelmed by everything else.
So the director of guidance would still be in place. We're not eliminating that position at all. And we're also not eliminating the director of health and human services. Those positions would be in place. Just on the org chart, they would fall under the assistant superintendent for student services. And I think, currently on the org chart, they fall under me, which I'm not sure. I mean, I work very hard. I supervise, for instance, directly Cheryl Barzak. Dr. Scazzarella supervises Mr. Nugent. I'm not sure that that's actually makes sense in the org chart. I think having them under student services, we would not be eliminating those positions. Okay. We would still have someone in charge of coordinating them. I've talked to both Steve Nugent and Cheryl Barzak, and they are both very excited about the possibility for this collaboration, because they do feel, I don't want to speak for them, but I think after speaking to them, they do feel sort of isolated in their roles. Mm-hmm. And if there was really an umbrella looking at all aspects of supporting kids, they felt excited about this.
Okay. The other thing is that in the red line, at the end of the previous job description, there's a whole bunch of detailed things, the activities, tasks.
Yep.
Where in your mind does that all go?
I felt, I see all that falling under this person. I just thought the level of detail was just sort of way more than we needed to in a job description. And so we tried really hard to kind of say supports all of these things, but some of the level of detail, supports arranges district transportation for the student. Like, they don't really arrange transportation for the students; they oversee it. So trying to just be a bit more concise and not as prescriptive. This is a job description that was almost, as you can see, originally it's 6 years old. So,
just an informational question. So help me out. How does 504 fit into the overall?
So 504s currently are overseen by our guidance department.
Yeah. What is a 504?
A 504 is is basically, let me tell you what it is, and then we tell you how it's been interpreted. So what it is if a student has some sort of disability where they need an accommodation. So very simply, if you have a student who is in a wheelchair and needs a ramp, and that's the accommodation they need, the 504 provides for making sure that kid gets that accommodation. It does not mean that they receive direct specialized services. So that's the difference. In special education, special ed, you get direct specialized services. 504s is about accommodations.
Okay.
The challenge has been how that has been interpreted over the last 10 to 15 years is it's often seen as kind of special education light. You don't need the direct services, but you need the extra time is the one that is used the most in terms of modifications. So the challenge has been, and I absolutely understand many families on 504s, kids do need modifications. It's just, it has not received the same amount of structural support because of the legal requirements is not as high as in special education. So a student does not have an IEP. They have a 504 plan that is seen as a regular education accommodation, not a special education accommodation.
Is that what is it, 766? Is that?
That's special education.
That's special ed. But the challenge has been, and every school has dealt with this, who oversees the 504s.
I see.
And it's hard for a guidance counselor with a caseload of 200 kids to give the same level of support to a special educator with a caseload of 24 kids.
Okay.
But again, they're not getting direct instruction.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
I hope that helps.
It does. No, it's
Did
very
I do all right with the?
You did great.
All right, Mr. Gilligan's about to jump in.
I'm the 504 coordinator currently, so
Yeah.
I hear the grievances if there's an issue. But it's a great idea, and it streamlines the processes of all those things, pieces working together, and then in combination with regular education, finance, and everything else. So.
And that's the reality of movement in education is it's about all kids and intervention and support for all kids. And when we start kind of piecing out this kid and that kid, that's just not the vision of what we want in North Andover. So I like this change.
Well, the other thing, too, that appeals to me about this is, if you will, redrawing the org chart, because I think we've needed some help there for quite some time, too. So that's, I applaud and encourage that, too. That's a good thing.
And I do want to just apologize that, I've done this very quickly. I did not, Ms. Carbone only told me she was going to retire 2 weeks ago. Normally, this would have been through the budget process, and I would have explained it, but this was an unanticipated retirement.
We're good.
I think we all understand the importance of accelerating the process to make sure we get the best. So we certainly are supportive of that. And I do just want to...
You understand.
Yes, yes. I do want to just say I was speaking recently with a guardian ad litem who is a legal advocate for children, and we were talking about services that the schools and the district need to provide. And I mentioned, the services that I think we provide, and I think we do a very good job on. And the first comment back was, is that person an assistant superintendent of special education or student services? And I said no, and their response was, then you don't take it seriously. So that a little bit is the perception that I think is out there. And so if that means that we need to change a position title in order to get the best that's there, I think that that's necessary. I do think we take it seriously, but I think it's interesting the perception of others that's out there. So
how often in other districts is this an assistant superintendent position?
Often.
Very often.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this new reorganization responsibilities is going to be really positive. I know one of the concerns of NAPAC was 504s and where that fell, so I think they'll be really happy to see this. I also, from reading this, it appears too that this new director of student services will also have a much more direct hands-on role in the hiring of special education teachers within the schools.
Correct.
So I think that's, I know that's also has been an area of some challenge. I think this is going to be a great way to just create a really strong team to support students as well.
And I think in coordination with the change that we've made at the middle and the high school around hiring a special education administrator as part of the budget, we're starting to develop a more robust special ed administrative view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you for your work on this.
You're welcome. And again, I'm hopeful that on the next time we meet, I will have a candidate sitting there. Because I do want to remind you that you actually do have to approve the candidate. It's one of the positions that you have to approve. So we may have an interview on the 24th.
The other thing I would just, I strongly support your use of the $27,000 or whatever it takes to get the right person in these jobs. These are the, few number of jobs, extremely important. We need to get the right person, so money should not be the sticking point here. Just saying.
Yeah, we'll do our best. Except it always is.
No, but I need it too, right?
I appreciate the flexibility. I think having the flexibility to move this up if the right person comes through our door may allow us to make a close that we would not be able to.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks. All right. And I just, that's it for me. I appreciate, it's a longer student superintendent's report than normal, so thank you.
There is no there's no old business, so we're going to jump right to new business, and I will turn.
Do we want to
Go out of order.
Do we want to allow the NAMS overnight trip to go first?
Yeah,
Is that
fine.
okay? Because I think that'll be quite quick. And
This is 8B. I'm assuming, Dr. McQuaid, you're going to speak, or?
here we go.
Sorry, I feel like I'm.
One for you.
Oh, Chris, you can go over there on the rolling chair.
Yeah. Very cozy.
Actually, let me introduce the NAM School Council right here. So they've been a great addition this year. Chris Farr, Sherry Marnoto, and Kelly Pappas. And they would...
Your daughter won.
I know.
Congratulations. I'm
Actually, I
putting it together.
retweeted the tweet today.
She did a phenomenal job, and I can't wait to have lunch. Is she going to choose to have it with me or without me?
Well, here's the funny thing. I
So much for staying on
Sonia,
task here, Miss.
what are you going to choose? And she said, Mommy, let's face it, you're the one who really wants to have lunch with. So we'll see. I'll be in touch.
I'm sorry, Dr. McQuaid.
Back to the overnight trip.
But actually, I asked the school council to come, our parents, half of the school council tonight, because our efforts to go to Nature's Classroom really evolved from our first meetings and how the partnership through our school council in order to improve NAMS started this. So these guys are going to start, Sherry and Kelly, and we'll take it from there.
So this year, the North Andover Middle School Council has chosen to focus on improving student motivation and connectedness to the school through outdoor team building activities. All of us on the school council are really passionate about this idea, and we're very grateful that Dr. McQuaid also shared that right from the start. So our plan is to give each student at NAMS the opportunity to participate in an outdoor experience in each of their 3 years. In the 6th grade, we would start off their experience with a kayaking and or paddleboarding trip at Stevens Pond. They participated in this trip in the fall, and it was such a huge success that that's really what started us thinking about it. So we want to leave that alone and keep that going, so that's 6th grade. For the 7th grade, we're currently looking into a ropes challenge course, whether with the North Andover Youth and Recreation Services, the rope course that we do have available here, or through a group called Project Adventure in Beverly. So we're still looking into those two options. For the 8th grade, we're excited about giving students, our current 7th graders being the first group, the opportunity to participate in Nature's Classroom. It is a residential outdoor school program. Students would spend 3 days and 2 nights, and we have chosen the Freedom, New Hampshire site. Our hope is that these outdoor team building experiences would help students navigate the waters and woods of North Andover and the surrounding areas and the corridors and classrooms of the middle school. As a parent of 3 children in the North Andover school system, I strongly support Nature's Classroom. I feel it will give them the opportunity to make meaningful social connections with their teachers and their peers while challenging them in a wide range of experiences. It'll provide them a team-building experience that will bring them closer to their classmates, their teachers, and nature as well.
So as Sherry mentioned, our large goal is to help our children make these strong social connections to their peers and their teachers. And we know as parents and educators that social connections affect children both physically and mentally. And the social relationships that emerge in middle school, they have short and long-term effects. And we want these effects to be positive. And teenagers in particular have a strong desire to be part of a group and form relationships, fit in at school. And in fact, I think it's these things that motivate so much of their thoughts and actions and feelings. And it's a critical time to establish these bonds, and they have far-reaching effects. And 8th grade seems to be the ideal time to take this trip because they've been together a few years and they're ready to form those deeper, longer-lasting bonds before they move on to high school, oftentimes at different places. And additionally, they're more independent, and we feel that they're ready for this experience because we've been building from 6th grade, 7th grade, and then finally 8th grade. It's a good culmination.
Thanks, you guys. Just personally, I went as a teacher a while back, as well as many of my teachers actually at NAMS went as students. So many of them are very excited to revisit this. But my personal experience as a teacher about 15 years ago, same site. I went 2 different times with one group of spring and 6th grade and then another group in the fall of 7th. And it was a remarkable experience for teachers and students. So it was amazing, the different choices that they had. Nature's Classroom has been around for about 45 years. It's has a wonderful reputation, and like I said, my experience was phenomenal. And what is really, actually I brought a visual. When they say think outside the books, they really mean think outside the books. You're outside, but it's all curriculum related. And what I really think is going to be exciting is our staff gets to work with Nature's Classroom to actually develop the curriculum and decide what our kids would make best work for them. And I know in a couple minutes you're going to hear about the next generation science changes coming down, and Nature's Classroom has actually shifted with those changes as well. So we're excited about that, to see what comes out of that. So I did give you a document about where we're at with communication to parents. To date, Nature's Classroom has come, and we held a parent night in January. And Chris, you were there. And we had about 30 parents come. And what I found interesting was many of them were very skeptical, which usually when I have a parent night is the reverse. Usually the excited parents come. And these parents had a lot of questions, and they left all ready to go. They wanted to pack their bags and were already volunteering to chaperone. So that was exciting. Nature's Classroom staff also met with our staff, and we had a very positive response as well. Teachers are very excited to go. We have a lot in place where if teachers can't go for whatever reason, we would make arrangements school-wide so that other teachers would take their place. So we feel that we've had those details covered. We have not met with the students yet because we didn't want to get them too excited if we weren't going to go. So, and I did give you a little bit of data. I started, I put on the website and I sent home, it's still on the website actually, but just kind of a feedback form where we were just trying to get some very brief information from parents. So as of Monday, 233 parents had responded out of 415, and 197 want their child to go. With just the information they have so far, which was very high numbers, very high. Nature's Classroom said that if we get about 80%, that'd be typical, and what I'm seeing is we're going to have we'll be higher than that. So our next steps is school committee approval, and then we'll meet with the students and then start sending out information to parents for commitment. As far as the financial pieces of it, my thinking on it, and again, feedback from everybody is welcome, is really to start now as far as a sliding kind of, they can go on a payment plan or have a lot of choices on how they would like to pay for 8th grade. And in that survey that I also did, 107 of those parents said they would be more than happy to donate some money for students in need. That was really refreshing to see. Through the school council's recommendation, I put $25 amount, 50, or they would like to choose. And it was just amazing how much people were just overwhelmingly generous to offer. And then 27 parents indicated out of that group that they would probably need some assistance, and that would be determined as we moved forward.
I just want to be clear with the school committee that I know there's a form that we need to fill out in terms of this. This was just more of the conceptual. At the next meeting, we'll bring all of the logistics. But I know we're going to get asked. So, Dr. McQuaid, this is a program where there's staff of Nature's Classroom. The kids are very well supervised by them and by our teachers.
Yep. It's a 1 to 12 ratio. And then how it works is Nature's Classroom staff works with the kids during the day, takes them through the programs, and then the teachers have some choices. I went the whole time because it was so much fun. And then the teachers are, we're on, look, I've already signed up. We're on, Gilly already says go, but we're on at night with the I already got my grant coming. And we're on at night with the kids. So imagine, Gilly, 14 boys and you, and
sitting by the campfire.
But we tire them out, and so we're on at night, and then again, then the next day, and then the teachers have a little bit of flexibility during the day, and then it's very structured as far as who is responsible at certain times.
Joan, I think the one thing that's great, it's over 4 decades in existence, but I know that Andover Public Schools has been doing it for quite some time.
I was going to ask, I thought that Andover did it, I could be wrong, but I was thinking 5th grade? Do they do it much earlier?
It all depends.
Andover's done 5th. There's different programs.
Okay.
But I think they've also done middle school. But I know Andover's been doing it for years because this was a topic that came up 5 or 6 years ago in the 5th grade. Out at one particular school had an interest in it.
It was Chris Farr.
I remember.
It was me.
And I think the other big key is where Joan has it highlighted, no child will be denied the experience based on cost.
Right.
And what is the cost?
They are giving us, well, it's $220 total, including our buses, and then the actual contract, which Jim Mealy has looked at and gives it its blessing. They're giving us $196 per student, and that's 2 nights, all their meals, and then a half day the next day. So.
And what is the living arrangement? I mean, the overnight arrangement?
They're actually, I have a map, but they're cabins, and they're double cabins. So basically, when you look at it, the chaperone is in the middle. And there's, bathrooms in the middle, and then the kids are on each side. And so there's anywhere between, it averages right around 12 kids on each side. And, again, we do tire them out on purpose. I know, you guys who have kids, you're going, oh my God.
You can take mine now.
No, actually, and we were laughing because those of you with adolescents, especially 8th grade boys, it's like, $200 for 2 nights of food. It's a deal. They do. But again, it's something that I think is really exciting to explore for North Andover. And when we talk about history, Gilly, actually North Andover used to go. And I heard 30 years ago, North Andover used to take kids to nature's classroom. So I'll have to look into that.
Before my time, Joan.
Yeah, I know, to see where we're really at.
So the interesting part of this to me is the juxtaposition. Your description. You just described Boy Scouts, all those guys sitting in the back. That's exactly what a Boy Scout leader would say the benefit of the Boy Scout program is, all of that social, emotional bonding, everything. And it's about the same age when they start doing their activities, so it's really interesting. Of course, that program's now had a good track record, too, over 100 years. So, I think everybody would be in favor of doing this. I think this is a great idea.
Okay,
so you'll come with more details, right?
Yeah.
I think this is fantastic. My question is, obviously on the one of the handouts that's here, there's a map of other places. It looks like probably a dozen or so kind of in the area. I'm just wondering what the criteria was for choosing this site over some of the others.
It was size.
Okay, all right.
We are
nowhere else.
this
Yeah.
particular class.
Where is this exactly in New Hampshire?
Freedom, New Hampshire. It's actually the one that I went.
Yeah.
It's actually the one I
Ossipee.
went to 15 years ago when I was teaching.
Okay.
I actually stayed there.
Our bubble class in the middle school.
Yeah.
One of the kids, yeah.
Well, I think that, obviously, if it becomes part of a tradition, if it's the one that kind of can hope, accommodate the largest number of students, then that's, where siblings can, kind of follow each other and all of that. So I think that that's great. So thank you. This is awesome. I'm really, really
So
excited.
does that mean you're going to sign up to share?
I probably would. I don't know if my son would want me to share.
Yeah.
I
We'll
think
put
we
you in
already
another
did
cabin.
email shop.
Yes.
So if you're ready to sign up.
And they will not peer parents with children, so you're good.
Yeah.
As long as there's no Wi-Fi, I am in.
Actually, that's
McDevitt, we'll take cabin 3, me and you.
It's going to be interesting because they have no
I'm going to make a
cell
comment, but I don't want it on the record, so.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Gross has some questions. Bail us out here, Mr.
Great. So Dr. McLean, thank you for bringing this forward. And the information that you forwarded with the slide deck is very informative. I think if you haven't had a chance to look at it, you really should. The two other questions I have, you mentioned with parents tonight, there were some parents who were skeptical. Can you describe the concerns that they brought out?
It was quite a variety. We talked a lot about safety and medical, and again, that they have that very well vetted out. Medical people were strong. Actually, when I was there was an incident with a girl, and they were right on it. Then the girl, her doctor, she was very well taken care of. Curriculum came up. They wanted to make sure that our students who were at Nature's Classroom for 2 days, wouldn't be missing anything back here, and we were able to explain that it's all connected and included. So, for example, our science curriculum would be on a hands-on outside experience versus in the classroom. Anything else, Chris?
Yeah, the only other thing I could think of is they were asking, like, what if someone couldn't stay over?
Okay,
You know,
yep.
if there was an issue with staying over, and they said most of the time the adults there will walk them through it, and they'll be fine. But if you had to, you know, a parent could come and pick them up if need be, but they said that rarely happens.
And so what if there are children who can't, don't want to, whatever the reason is, they're not going?
Well, what we would most likely do, numbers would determine a lot of our decisions, depending on how many were not going to go, for whatever reason. If there were a lot of kids, again, we're still in the unknown space, one of the team teachers would stay back, and we would give them comparable curriculum, you know, during the day, and they would have their regular NAMS day. If it's a handful of kids, since we're going to go by team, and there's 3 teams, and the other teams would absorb those kids. And again, that's how we did it when I went, and it worked pretty well. It really did. You know, the ultimate is to get everybody to go if we can.
And so for
I have
families...
2 more questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
Go ahead. Sorry. So, one other comment. I mean, we typically look for a chaperone ratio of 10 to 1, or at least for the high school overnights. When you say 12 to 1, is that the chaperone ratio of the staff, or is that total in the captain?
I can't quite understand.
Is it does it include Nature's Classroom, the 1 to 12, or?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it's always 1 to 12.
Day and night.
During,
Day and night.
Yep.
Okay, the last question I have is, it looks like this is planning to run late October, early November.
Correct, yep.
And I'm upstate New Hampshire, I mean, you know, that's very cold, and is that the intent?
Well, what that they have had, they showed us, and actually the slides are on our website, the NAMS website. We could get nice weather, or we could get snow, or rain, and they did show pictures of students in snow, and they adapt. They shift things around to whatever to match the weather. So yeah, it could be cold, or it could be beautiful, just like any.
Right.
well, and if it's something we continue, we could always go a little bit earlier in
Yeah.
the fall, just what they had available
Right.
this year.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I see.
Mrs. Moore?
Yep, so
Thank you.
in terms of the cost, is there a way to maybe reach out to families who maybe like free and reduced lunch, or is there some way to support those families maybe proactively to let them know about what might be available to them?
Yeah, I think most people have been pretty honest so far. Now, the data that I'm gathering now is anonymous, but that out of the 27 who said they would need help, and so once we get approval and start getting our process in place, we definitely would. We would start to, figure out who those people are, and most importantly, if we find kids who aren't going, to try to respectfully find out if it's financial or not, and if it is financial, to again then continue to bring them forth.
Thank you, this is exciting.
This is awesome, and I think you kind of mentioned it, but I have always found everyone in the community so open and giving. So, I mean, just seeing, I forget what the number was, 107, I think it is, if they would be willing to assist. I mean, that's almost half of the responses right away who said they'd be willing to help out. I mean, that just, I think, speaks so much to the caliber of our community. So this is great. Since you can take my kid now.
You've said that before.
I just want it on the record. He has permission.
Do it in the spring.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump back up to 8A for the curriculum update, Mr. Gilligan.
So I would like to just frame this very quickly, but I would like to invite the team up here. Come on, team, as I
So we have Lorene Marks, our humanities coordinator, Carol Lockham, our STEM coordinator for the district, and we have Lynn Crosby, third grade teacher from the private Albert E. Thompson School, Carolyn Bookta, fifth grade teacher from the Sargent School, and Ann Boudreau, second grade teacher from the Franklin School here tonight. And I appreciate you guys' patience hanging with us, because I know that you guys are typically at home planning lessons at this time, so thank you for coming.
It's so great to have teachers here. And it's also so great to have teachers from 3 different schools who have been working on a consistent curriculum, which is hopefully a foreshadowing of where this presentation is going to go. I just want to alert your school committee. I just want to remind you of our policy regarding curriculum. So it's a little fuzzy, but what it says is that the superintendent has the authority to approve new programs and courses. The committee itself will consider and officially adopt new programs and courses when they constitute an extensive alteration in instructional content or approach. So my thought here is what we're going to be actually presenting tonight is a multi-year approach to a consistent curriculum across our schools. And I am hoping that maybe at our next meeting we might vote to do an adoption of this. I think it could be argued whether or not this is an extensive alteration, but I think what you're going to see is a very coherent, well-thought-out approach to a multi-year goal of having a North Andover education be a North Andover education regardless of what school you attend. So I think it would be helpful to just kind of get school committee approval. Mr. Gilligan will frame this, but what we're really going to go in depth on is year 1 of the implementation. We would then come back with kind of further moving next year, at this time year 2, but really kind of the concept is what I think I'm looking for the school committee to give approval. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Gilligan, you're up.
Dr. Price, thank you so much. This is really exciting to have the teachers here tonight and have the different folks. One of the things Dr. Price identified in her entry plan was developing that rigorous and consistent curriculum, meeting the needs of all students, whether that's high achieving, special education, ELL, systems and structures, and the resources to support our system. And I think probably one of the things that excited me most is it's been quite some time since we've had money to update materials, particularly at the elementary level, in some time. And I'll take you through a little bit that. But we're really excited, as mentioned in one of the previous presentations, about the creativity of Dr. Price working with the town manager around the Medicaid reimbursement, services like OT, PT, that anything after $165,000, the first $165,000 will go to the town. Anything after that will come back to the schools. And that's something that you guys discussed during budget season. It will be protected from ourselves because it will only be able to be used for curriculum line items in perpetuity.
It's like a 529.
Yeah, kind of like a 529 stand. And so I'll just jog your memory briefly. So this first year, it's going to take a year to build up the Medicaid money. And as Dr. Price has planned for the future, when we look at modular classrooms or expansion to lower class size, she budgeted and we budgeted as a team for 2 additional elementary teachers next year. That would be one-time expenditures, one of the $55,000 for curriculum and one of the $55,000 for furniture. So just to jog your memory as we went down memory lane there, is pretty exciting. Before we get into the plan itself, some of the other awesome creative things that I think have taken place this year has to do with personnel, and it's not really necessarily the addition of personnel. It's the idea of the technology director and taking on that more modern role of having those library media specialists under Mr. Grant, and some of the awesome things we've seen the library media specialists do, what we'll see the teachers do with the model classrooms, et cetera, and that just makes sense. We talked about the special education director or assistant superintendent for school services, student services, and of course you guys know Lorene and Kara, but more importantly, the FCIs, the Facilitators of Collaborative Inquiry, when they were developed, was a cost-neutral opportunity to get more folks to assist with PD, looking at student work, looking at data. And, it's something that can work really well at the elementary. I think, as presented previously here, the ability to bring back content-specific specialists, department coordinators at the middle school and the high school, which would require a memorandum of agreement with the union, which is supportive, will be really, really helpful at the middle school and high school to have folks coordinating in those areas. Okay? And last but not least, the ELL coordinator, one of the things you've seen in the budget, and one of the reason I added the ELL coordinator here at the end is because we're looking for a small piece in the budget next year so the person can get back, the teacher that we have, our coordinator that oversees is teaching basically full-time now, get back to not only coordinating with the teachers and the tutors that we have, but also reviewing the entire program based on our CPR, our coordinated program review, so that we can make recommendations for the following year to best serve our kids. The numbers haven't changed much with our ELL kids. It's typically between 1.2% and 1.7% of our total population, between 70 and 90 students. But one thing that we've been seeing more and more in the past year and a half, we're getting more kids that are coming into our schools that don't speak any English at all to start. So maybe not necessarily the complexity, but they're starting off at a bigger deficit of language acquisition skills. So that's one of the things you'll see here.
Can I ask you super quick? I mean, are you seeing differences of languages, like a broader spectrum of them, or is that
as Dr. Price and I were at Royal Crest right before break with our Title I program up there. 13 students that we met with that day weren't born in the United States, and we had Kenya, we had Egypt, we had the Middle East, a lot of different places. I have a family moving in April from Portland, Oregon, and the students are French, and they don't speak much English. So it is a wide variety. I think typically in the past, my experience when I was at the Thompson School, for example, Thompson and Atkinson have the majority of the students who speak English as their second language. I saw more students who their native language was Spanish. And they knew some English, but they still needed some of the services. And depending on how they test, there's different levels of service that they need based on that. And I think that's going to be critical for our coordinator next year, so we can review all this to make recommendations for the following year as part of this curriculum planning phase.
This is Ms. Mako?
Ms. Mako at the Atkinson School.
That's great.
Okay. So for our current status, as I mentioned early on, I mean, $55,000 might not sound like a lot to a lot of folks, but I mean, we're pretty thrilled to be able to take the steps necessary to start addressing some of the areas identified by Dr. Price in our entry plan. And to have that money for next year just means the world, and you're going to hear from teachers in a little bit. But at the elementary school, I mean, teachers are provided with Reading Street and Right Traits for Writing and Houghton Mifflin Math and Foss and Science, but we're going back to implementations of 8, 9, 10, and 12 years ago with very little money in frozen budgets most years to get updated materials. So it's been that long, with some of those shifts. Across all three levels, particularly at the secondary level, you see unit documents for all courses, and that's an ongoing being revised. Ms. Larkham's going to talk a little bit about the science standards that have just changed in the Commonwealth. But all three levels, we've been working really hard with common assessments and looking at those things. But with the shift of the curriculum from the Massachusetts to the new frameworks in 2011, a lot of the materials are outdated. They have to shift around chapters, and it's really a lot of work, and we haven't had the ability to purchase updated materials in a while. And it's going to be pretty exciting to hear Ms. Marks talk in particular about Lucy Calkins tonight, because we've had some of the Lucy Calkins talk before in the writing, but we've already trained over more than half of our elementary teachers. And the thing that's most exciting about that, when you go back to the first slide and you talk about all students, you talk about special education students, you talk about advanced students, this writing program could be an inclusive program that is beneficial for all students because it's designed in a way that's such that whether you're advanced, whether you're struggling, there's entry points for you into that writing process. And that was obviously the first step that makes the most sense for us. As we go through, at the end, we'll wrap up with a timeline of this 5-year plan, but I'm pretty excited.
I think he's excited.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting.
All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Kara, and she's going to give you a little highlight and then get into some more specific details, particularly around next generation science standards and mathematics. So.
Thank you. And our main focus areas for the coming school year involve curriculum work around writing, math, and science. Not to say that the other areas are being ignored, but these are our focus areas for the coming school year. And again, I'm going to start off with some math information for you. So Mr. Gilligan, if you can flip to the next, we're going to kind of go through all those details in the coming slides. So from the MCAS presentation this fall, you saw that our median student growth percentile, this is the across the district, grades 4 through 8, and then 10th grade. And ideally, we would like to see scores over 51% in growth. And as you can see, we have that fantastic growth in 7th grade that we can, I believe, attribute to our new applied math science course. Getting that extra boost of math in 7th grade has been very valuable, and a significant change there. We'd like to see some higher 6th grade. Again, it's not easy to pinpoint why the numbers might be where they are, but I can say coming in, with 5 elementary schools, it is a challenge to make sure that all of our students kind of are entering 6th grade at the same point, and so an aligned curriculum might help and assist with that, and we would hope to see the SGP grow in 6th grade. At the 10th grade, although our students achieve proficient status and meet the graduation requirement for the math MCAS, our growth is much lower than we would like to see. So there have already been some changes kind of rolling out for the high school. If you can flip to the next slide, Mr. Gilligan.
And I would just point out, as she mentioned, that when you hit 51, that's the on-target goal for the 75 PPI points that the state awards. So it's not a traditional 100-point scale in the sense of that 7th grade is probably one of the tops you'll see
in the state.
In the state. Anywhere.
I do want to just say that I spoke with Dr. Scazzarella today, and in terms of the SGP in 10th grade, she's actually going to be presenting the interventions they've been doing this year and kind of some mid-course corrections at our next meeting.
Great.
So in addition to those corrections that Dr. Scazzarella will present, we have done a little bit of restructuring with the progression of courses that the students will take. So this year's current 8th graders, the class of 2012, again, they're the first year who have taken the applied math science class in 7th grade, so they're already coming into the high school with a slightly different background from previous years. Currently, the algebra and geometry courses are spiraled, so they take a little bit of both in 9th and 10th grade. And that provides a few different challenges. One is, again, kind of jumping back and forth between the content can be a little tricky, and with the trimester schedule, we have a number of different teachers teaching both of those courses, and you really can't link students together to have a more consistent teacher all year long in either grade. So what we've decided to do is shift so that all students will complete Algebra 1. Again, depending on where they're coming in, it might be during, as you can see, the students who start Algebra 1 in 8th grade primarily will finish at the start of 9th grade and then go on to geometry to conclude 9th grade, and then move on to advanced classes from there. Other students will be finishing Algebra 1 at the end of 9th grade and then taking geometry in 10th grade. But the bottom line is that all of the students will follow that same progression, and we won't have the flip-flop and the kind of spiraled approach. The nice thing with having geometry second is that a lot of the algebra skills can still be developed in the geometry curriculum. There's kind of this embedded nature of it. And then they've also worked really hard at creating a schedule that allows some more continuity so that students will have, ideally, and it looks like it's pretty promising, one teacher for all of 9th grade and one math teacher for all of 10th grade. So we can really assist those students. Yes, it's going to be fantastic. And I think on the teacher end, a little more manageable too, that they really can focus their attention on the students and not be jumping, teaching. Some of them, again, might have one prep all year, which might seem like it's a little less challenging than they're used to. But again, some continuity would be really fantastic.
Ms. Arcova, I'm assuming that this is all aligned with the MCAS tests that 10th graders take, right?
Yes, correct.
It's the right progression at the right time.
Yes.
They're learning it.
Which will be the competency determination through 2019.
Yes.
So can I ask a quick question? How do students get selected for either Algebra 1 or 8th grade math? What is...
So the selection process is not changing. And off the top of my head, I don't remember these specific details, but the 8th grade teachers do a great job. So 7th grade teachers select, and I did hear from one of the 7th grade teachers that said, thank you for including the nice arrow that shows that students in 8th grade math can move on to Algebra 1 CD. That again, there is, we acknowledge that students grow every year, and some of them might make some, significant improvements in 8th grade and really have that ability to still get to, if you kind of follow it down, to AP classes their senior year. So I really like that it allows a lot of movement throughout their growth as they develop and strengthen their math skills. So I don't know off the top of my head. I'm happy to get some information for you, but the process itself is not changing. And really the 9th grade Algebra 1 CD course, all of the students enter that class, and then we've set up the schedule so that the high school teachers actually determine whether students are ready for honors geometry or CP level geometry. So there's some kind of fluidity with the schedule. So the high school will be working on kind of updating their curriculum documents to adjust for some of these changes. In grades K through 8, again, they're really, entering in last year, it was, what are the essentials? What is everybody teaching? And, I found that there are some curriculum guides, and they're really more for parents kind of to see what curriculum is. And I'm hoping and excited that we have some money to really have a group of teachers, hopefully a tremendous amount. I've already gotten some interest from people to work on creating really unit documents that provide a lot of detail following a backward design method. So McTeague and Wiggins have the big UED, Understanding by Design method, and what I like is that it's not just focusing on what are some of the knowledge and skills, but it's really taking it to the step of making meaning. What does this all mean? How can we understand the world around us? And then transfer it to new situations, which really increases that level of rigor to the curriculum and the work that they do.
In elementary school, is it sort of like equal time given to ELA and math, more or less?
No, ELA is significantly longer. Typically, math's close to about an hour, but ELA, you have spelling, you have grammar, you have writing, and you have the literacy block. I'd say it's closer to 2 hours. 2 hours daily.
Does it start to equal out at some point in elementary school? So it's equal time?
That's pretty typical in any elementary school stand in Massachusetts, just because of the nature of teaching all those different components of literacy, because of reading, because of writing, because of a whole host of things. And we have some real experts. We could get to that after. But that's typically what it is.
Okay.
Now, one thing that I can tell you is that we will be looking to, with Lucy Calkins, bringing other curriculum areas like math and science and social studies into the writing arena, which is pretty exciting.
Thank you. So in the process, we'll really be identifying, I think the key, stage 1, is what are those essentials? What should students know, understand, and be able to do? And that will, again, provide that alignment across the district, that if we really can say, here's the essential, because the mass framework, that include the Common Core, are so cumbersome, it really will be valuable for us to sit down and make sure that that is very documented, not only for our current teachers to create the alignment, but as new teachers enter the system, they can really have something to start off the school year with, and look at. So the second step in the process is determining the assessments. What's the acceptable evidence? How do we know if students know, understand, and are able to do what we've put forth for them and the desired results? And then the third, and a very valuable and important piece, and again speaks to the budget that we're excited to have, is looking at resources and materials of how do we lay out a learning plan that establishes and reaches those desired results that we've established. So in math, we are looking to explore more of what that might be, and have these teams of teachers, again, really identify what are the essentials and then what are some materials that we can use. Right now, we do have some teachers piloting out Go Math, which is the updated version of the HMH, the Home Method Math, and some are finding, it's helpful and useful, but we feel like we don't want to limit ourselves. We really want to look at what are all the options out there. A number of teachers are also supplementing with Engage New York, which is I've heard some good things about, so we really want to look at those and some others to decide. So it will be part of next year's process. So hopefully next year, maybe around this time, we'll have a recommendation, and you'll see in the long-term plan that we would hopefully be putting forth a good recommendation for that next year to perhaps purchase some more math materials.
I want to make it really clear here for a moment. I've talked to a number of superintendents, math experts. There is really not a Lucy Calkins equivalent right now in the math world that people feel is really addressing the needs, the complex needs of the Common Core. I can just talk from my own life. We were looking to transition to the Common Core at Newton North High School, and we could not find a book that we thought, or a curriculum resources that we thought, so we actually developed our completely own resource. And so the challenge here is, if there it just isn't an answer yet. And so one of the things we really have to do is, this is much more organic than you're going to see in some other areas, and that is a direct result of, and this is kind of, at least in this Commonwealth, very much shared feeling that there is not an answer right now that is the right answer to the math curriculum.
Just correct me if this is not, if I'm thinking of the wrong thing, but if I went back and I looked at MCAS scores by grade level, ELA is always above math in almost every grade level. Is that true? I mean, math always tracks lower until maybe you get to 8th grade or something.
It did for a while, and then elementary math really took off a few years ago.
Okay.
Particularly the growth, and there's a couple schools where it really took off.
Okay.
But I would just echo what Dr. Price said. I mean, the publishers make books for what? California, Texas, and Florida, and they all slap stickers on that say Common Core, and they haven't caught up. And I think the real neat piece of this, as Karen mentioned, the curriculum group across not only elementary but middle, and we may even include some high school people in this group, they're going to say, what are the things that kids need to know and be able to do? And that will be done. And then through the course of the year, there's different things that they can try so that they can make a recommendation for the following year, which is exciting.
Get that.
All right, Fit Money, financial literacy. There's I think we talked about this a little bit maybe before tonight's meeting, and I'm not sure if we talked about it at another meeting, but there's significant financial support from an outside resource, maybe to be named later. But
you'll meet on March 7th.
March 7th. Thank you, Dr. Price. I was waiting for that. Where they'll provide financial support so that we can get a group of teachers together to develop a financial literacy curriculum, and we're looking to start in 4th grade. I think one of the cool things about it is the interdisciplinary approach, linking mathematics as a natural fit, but also in the social studies standards, there's things like economics, there's trade, there's bartering, there's history, all those pieces. One of the coolest components that when we had met this summer, when Dr. Price brought these folks in, was not only is this an opportunity for our teachers to get paid to develop some curriculum around this being such an important thing, but there's also a parental component piece to it, where there's some parental outreach and even some maybe parental training around finances. And I think that's really cool to include.
Will we get more information on the 7th?
On the 7th.
Okay.
On the 7th.
First people to see the logo. Do you like it?
I do.
Good.
I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it supposed to be like with a really gigantic muscle?
Yeah, and you see the little bar going up.
Yeah, I get that. But
I'm pretty excited about the logo.
Yeah, it should be sort of an Arnold Schwarzenegger thing.
All right, so the 7th, not only the McKaylee Center, but Fit Money.
Fit Money.
Fit Money, I like it. Might be good for adults.
All right.
Hold on to your seats here.
So, again, very excited that the Board of Ed adopted the new Math, Science, Technology, Engineering standards. It's been kind of a work in progress the last few years, and they did adopt. They incorporate the next generation science standards. So, again, much like we have our math frameworks that incorporate the Common Core, it's the same model. They really took them and made some important tweaks to make it helpful across the state. They really integrate the technology and engineering as well as the math and ELA, and you can see in the nice Venn diagram kind of some of those components. I know it's a little hard to read, but there really are so many overlaps between all of the discipline that they identified that, and really it's a strength to them. They are grade-specific standards, so currently we have, the old version are K1 and 2 standards, and it's up to towns to decide which aspects they want to put in place at each grade level, and then same for 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, and 8. So what they chose to do this time around is make sure that all first graders, K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, have their own
specific standards, and that way, if a student does move across the state, they don't have gaps or deficits or repeat information based on how a particular town chose to unroll the prior standards. So I think it's something pretty exciting. Again, much like I mentioned in the math work, they focus on the long-term transfer goals and really understanding, not just kind of memorizing facts and kind of random knowledge. They're very practice-oriented, so inquiry-based, really applying the scientific practices. And again, higher order thinking skills are very much throughout those standards.
Can you give us an example or two about technology and engineering? I never.
So in
sounds good. I just never know what that means.
So I know at the high school level there is still a separate technology engineering set of standards, but particularly in I'm trying to picture 8. I believe all the way up through K8, they do have. To pull one up. Think exactly. But the engineering side of it and the use of technology to gather information and to understand the concepts. Okay. More in the past, I feel like they were very much separate entities that may or may not be missed, perhaps, in curriculum.
So in the old stand, like 3 through 5 was a cumulative study of information until 5th grade, which they had an MCAS, which was based on 3 years worth of information. Same with the 8th grade science test, because those were the only 2 levels tested. With this adoption, they will give districts 3 years to fully implement it. So,
well, it's just personal confusion because I understand science, I understand math, but when you say technology and engineering, particularly engineering, I would define it one way. I'm just not sure what the standard says, what the Common Core says. So I'm just curious as to what students would end up with at the end of that time, knowing about engineering, literally engineering. So,
and a lot of the process of how do we design and develop, and again, those practices of testing a model, testing an idea, versus kind of the more scientific approach of coming up with a hypothesis, going through the steps, coming to your conclusion. So kind of the more the design
science
standards.
versus engineering,
yes.
Right? That makes complete sense.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. So as Mr. Gilligan mentioned a little bit, so the state, of course, will give us some time to transition to these new standards. They don't anticipate a change to the MCAS for 3 years. There is no national test that is being developed, so we don't need to look at again, this might be an MCAS 3.0 or something with the science piece adding into it, but there isn't a national test. So they will be revising the MCAS eventually. High school, it's still a competency determination, so we won't be making major changes there. Again, they anticipate it's going to take at least 3 years to get a new test off the ground. 5 and 8 is still a grade span test, and so really there's a lot of overlap between the old and the new, and so we can transition to those grades. It really shouldn't impact the MCAS scores drastically, and you'll see in a minute that actually it could help our 8th grade MCAS scores. The nice thing is we've already started. Actually, last spring, I started to work with a committee of 15 districts that are working in a partnership to really start evaluating. So we were using the draft standards, creating UBD units. It's been exciting work, and we have 7 North Andover teachers that are part of this work, and will continue through the summer. And then once those are done, we'll be able to take them, into district and start to kind of tweak them and make them our own a little bit. And we are looking at, so through the UBD process, we are looking at all free and open resources. Because we have 15 districts, we didn't want to decide on, one particular program that, everybody had to purchase. So it's exciting, and the teachers are really collaborating to a very high level and sharing everything, all the resources they have, and really taking what they have and just tweaking them and updating. So it's pretty exciting work.
Okay.
Flip to the next. So I'm going to mention the middle school. I'd say this is where our largest change will be with the science standards. Right now, 6th grade takes life science, 7th grade focuses on earth, and 8th grade focuses on physical science. And as you can see on the MCAS, we have a pretty low % in the advanced, a lot in proficient, but we have some improvement that we can make. And we feel part of this is because the MCAS in 8th grade covers all 3 areas. However, again, they haven't seen life science in detail since 6th grade. So there's some significant time, and 8th grade teachers do a great job of reviewing, but there's only so much review you can really do. So the state is recommending, and we fully agree, to spiral the curriculum, where life, earth, and physical will be taught at each grade level, kind of introducing more complex topics each year and really diving in, much like we do in elementary. So our proposal is that we will transition 6th grade in this coming school year, 7th grade the year after that, and then 8th grade, and that will, help us prepare. We won't have any gaps for those grade levels rather than transition them all at once, and it also allows us to kind of allocate some budget for each grade individually as they transition instead of having to do all 3 years at the same time to purchase supplies and equipment that they might need. In the meantime, 7th and 8th grade will still shift some of their earth and physical science curriculum to start to align with the new standards. So, but they won't transition to add in the other topics until they're designated.
So
here.
6th grade will start with a sort of a spiral approach.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And they're excited. It's been really nice to work with them.
Okay.
So when we say they're transitioning, does that mean they're working on it, but they won't be implemented until the following year, or they're implementing this fall?
Good question. So 6th grade, we are planning on implementing, so they will make the transition
This fall.
This fall.
Okay.
Good question.
And one of the things that just want to be clear is that a lot of the money that we've allocated some will go for resources. A lot of it's going to go for summer training time for teachers. Something that has not been really that much used here in North Andover, which is frankly surprising. Many districts use summertime to really prepare for the upcoming year, and compensating teachers for their time in the summer will be a big part of this process.
Again, very exciting to have some budget to put towards, again, not just resources, but teachers' time, so they can really plan ahead. It's great.
That's excellent. Thank you.
So again, the middle school is where the most amount of change will occur. If you can flip to the next slide. High school, again, biology is what primarily our students take for the MCAS competency determination, so we really won't shift that until we have a new MCAS and kind of know what that's going to look for, because they won't be shifting that yet. However, chemistry and physics and our kind of robotics and engineering courses can start to make some of those changes, because again, it won't impact the MCAS. And that's the same for K through 5. So again, they can start shifting to the science engineering practices and start testing out some of the models of our cross-district work. Elementary specifically will be looking for some probably larger changes in the 2018-2019 school year. And our model in the group has really been start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, because there's only so much we can do at once. We're starting where we are and just little changes along the way.
That could be the North Andover mantra, actually.
It's Teddy Roosevelt's, too.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, too.
Good.
Thank you, Kara. So I'm going to turn it over to Lorene Marks, our humanities coordinator.
All right, so switching to writing, I think you've already heard Lucy Cochran's mentioned a couple of times here this evening. She's really one of the most renowned leaders in the instruction and teaching of writing and reading. She really started out with writing. So I have a quote here, and she says, "Children need to be explicitly taught the skills and strategies of effective writing and the qualities of good writing." And I think writing has always been something that teachers have struggled with. Many people are not confident in their own writing, and the steps to explicitly teach writing, they really haven't been out there as clearly as we're getting to see them now. She's done a tremendous amount of work. She uses the workshop model in order to do that. And that's something that some of our teachers, the teachers here, have been using. And that is less of a program, when we talk about programs again, and more of a philosophy. So she does have guiding resources, but it's really a philosophy, the workshop model. It's not a program per se. And that entails the belief that good writers can be developed. Those skills can be taught, and kids can get better and better at writing. So I have some data here. Writing data is a little bit more difficult to kind of extrapolate than the math or science data. The writing scores here, this was a grade 4 2015 MCAS scores. But the writing piece is actually combined with the rest of the ELA test. So you don't get like a separate score there.
Right.
There's information here about two of the standards, the writing anchor standard and the production and distribution of writing, text types and purposes. So if you look at that, I think Greg had mentioned earlier that the writing program would allow for us to include all students. So we really wanted to kind of highlight what our special needs population looks like compared to the district. And if you look at that, we're consistently lower in the special needs as well as the high needs population. Our high needs population actually kind of matches, in most cases, the state average. But we really want to bring that up, and we want to be able to include all of those students. So that's what that piece of data shows. The next chart here, this is not what I would call really great scientific or reliable data, so I want to just put that out there right away. This is from our fall common writing assessment. It's narrative writing pieces scored on a 4-point rubric, and you see each grade level going down the column and then the areas that they're graded in. I have to say right out that not all teachers entered the data that we were able to take this from, so that definitely impacts the reliability. Also, it's somewhat subjective when you're looking at writing and you're looking at a rubric. But I think what I felt was important to be able to see is we do see a positive progression as you move down in grade. So the scores do go up. However, when you look at the final totals, or at the end of 5th grade as well, we're talking about a 4-point rubric, which is where we would hope to get most of our students, and we're not there. We're a little bit above 2. So that, again, points to the need to be able to train our teachers to be able to give that explicit instruction in writing. Pardon me?
The totals at the bottom.
What is looking on that chart?
I think that becomes an average. Yeah.
It's an average for each of the 6 traits, and this is only the first test of the year, the fall.
Right, the fall writing prompt, narrative.
I don't understand why an average would make sense if this is a progressive curriculum. Is there something I'm missing?
Say that again, Brian?
Why would an average make sense if it's a sort of a growth?
It's progressive.
Yeah, well, this is the first test on these specific traits, the 6 traits for each grade level. So ideas, the average was 1.4. This is just an overall total of those 5.
But when the rubrics are grade specific.
Yes. Yes.
So,
yep.
Right. So it's not that they're being graded upon the same qualifications as
Correct.
a 5th grader as a 1st grader.
Correct.
So I think what we're showing by the average is maybe that per their grade expectation, they're scoring about a 2.
Right. And that we really need to improve upon that. And as I said, not every student has been entered in here, so I wanted to point that out right from the beginning, that it's not like a totally scientific, reliable piece, but it does show us kind of a trend with the information that we do have.
For the narrative rubric.
Right. All right. In terms of writing, just something else I wanted to say in terms of the assessment piece. We are moving to more park-like assessment, which is going to include a greater focus on writing. Some of the things that we really need to focus on is stamina with our students. I know that I've talked about that a little bit with reading, but stamina with writing is also a big issue, being able to keep at it for a while. And I was at a meeting recently this week with other literacy people, and they talked about stamina just in terms of the physical part of writing, because kids are so used to doing the technology, and I don't know what the teachers may see in their classrooms, but I can remember when I was in school and those kids would get tired and start shaking their hand with the pen in their hand, but also that piece of stamina to be able to kind of continue with that. And around the test and around the writing, we need to be able to talk about more academic vocabulary. For example, rather than can you write about the main idea, a conclusion one could draw would be, that's the kind of language that's now coming on these tests that we have to start to be able to address. Ranking answers, you may have information put in front of you to synthesize into a writing piece, and they may all be good answers that correlate, but you're going to have to figure out what's the best answer. And that's where the writing and the higher order thinking skills are going to come in, and that's what this program helps kids to think about and to look at. Grade 4, one of the things that I heard recently in terms of PARCC testing, grade 4 really focuses on narrative writing and pulling evidence from the text, and that's something that the Common Core really talks about. And whether students have not had a whole lot of exposure to that. It was like write about what I think, write about what I feel, but not writing about pulling actual details from the text. And a lot of students go off base with that because they read the question and they immediately relate it to themselves and not to the information in the text. So that needs to be worked on as well. And then paired text, reading 2 pieces of literature, being able to take the information from that and synthesize that into a writing piece. So those are all different kinds of requests that are going to be made of our student, expectations of our students that we really need to work with them on. The MCAS this year, we are taking the MCAS. There's a section called 2B, and that is going to be a PARCC-like section, and it's going to include those kind of questions, both narrative writing and reading. It will not be scored, so it's not going to impact our MCAS score, but our students will be exposed to that. So just, the whole writing piece is going to come into all of that as well as we move forward. So, all right. Writing curriculum work, elementary level, we have about half of our teachers, not last summer, but the prior 2 summers, who participated in the Homegrown Institute through Teachers College at Columbia. They provide a week-long training. And we are going to do that again this year. We have a number of 3 through 5 teachers signed up, and that's the group that we don't have quite as many teachers trained already, which is great. The last time we did it, the whole session was filled up with the exception of 2 teachers in K through 2 with North Andover teachers. So we have a lot of, we have more K through 2 teachers trained already. And the elementary teachers will be provided with the units of study and writing to help them. 6 through 8, the ELA and special ed teachers will also receive the units of study and writing, and the teachers will work to unpack those studies and understand the progressions in writing. And again, as we talked about, the writing workshop allows for differentiation for all students and the inclusion of students with special needs in the writing classroom. And that, I mentioned the progressions, and we will have, I think you said a museum walk afterwards.
There'll be a museum walk
So I'll
shortly.
show you an example of what those progressions look like and how that helps to address the differentiation for all students, including those students who are accelerating in writing, and how to move them forward as well. So, and always, one of the things that when I took the Institute they talked about is teach toward the struggle. Teaching shouldn't be easy. So if you, for example, those students that are really advanced, it shouldn't be easy for them. Let's push them, let's move them forward. So teach toward that struggle. Let's see. So the Homegrown Institute, again, I talked about that a little bit, but we have staff developers that come out from Teachers College, and they only come out during the summer because they're actually in schools teaching this during the school year. So that's kind of a different experience in terms of professional development, and I think makes a big difference in terms of working with teachers. The first half of the class is kind of theory and how you work with the program, the philosophy, and then the second is actual experience. So when I did it the first day, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm an awful writer. I can't do this. How do kids do this? And it was amazing for me, the strategies that they taught us that allowed me to write differently, and how that allows the students to write differently. And the teachers can talk to you about this. Lynn was a Thompson teacher, took it the first year. She sent kids down to my office. They said to me, I hated writing before. I couldn't write, and they would come down with these papers that they were so proud of. And I saw that in class after class after class, and I'm sure the teachers will talk to you more about that piece. So. They also do work on how to conference with students, what kind of language to use, how to use mentor texts to help with the writing process. It talks here about classroom structures that support inquiry and collaboration, talking about writing partnerships, and I don't know, the teachers may touch a little bit about that as well as we go through that with what they have to share. The units of study in writing, I'm not going to read all of this, but it just talks about, you have opinion / argument, information, narrative writing. Those are the genres that the Common Core / math frameworks are asking us to teach. Students need to be aware of those. Teachers need to be teaching them every year. And so the materials that are provided in the units of study support that teaching. Let me see what else I might want to mention here. There are performance assessments that are involved. There's intensive writing opportunities. That's another thing that we need to look at, is we're not writing in classrooms every day. Writing was not. The literacy block involved a lot of the reading and the reading kinds of things like the phonics instruction, the spelling, vocabulary, but we weren't necessarily writing every day. And probably still aren't in all of our classrooms, to be honest with you, but that's something that we need to work on, is that constant daily practice with the writing. So, and this is just a picture of what they look like at each grade level. So you have a Pathways book, which you'll get to take a look at, which has assessments in it. It has student checklists, and that's how students can help to set their own goals with the teacher to move forward in their writing. It also has exemplars. For example, I can show you in the Pathways book, it starts with kindergarten and goes all the way through grade 8. So you have an opinion paper on why football is a great sport. And it shows you what you would expect at the kindergarten level, same topic, first grade, second grade, third grade. So that's really helpful for teachers to be able to look at those and to look at where their students are falling. It's based on the Common Core. The Common Core is a big reach. Not all of our students are going to look, say you have a 5th grade student. I'm sure they don't all look like what you see in the book at 5th grade. Is that fair to say? That's fair. So, but that's what we're working toward. So, and then we have, what you can see here is, this is the narrative writing units, K through 8, and it tells you the different topics there. And I thought I'd have teachers speak a little bit here. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to be in each of these classrooms more than once to look at the students and watch the teachers. And when I looked at this, I looked at crafting true stories, lessons from the mentors, lessons from the masters. And I was in Ms. Boudreau's class this year, and she was using a mentor text, and the students went back and worked with that text in their writing. And I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words about what you had done there.
I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to deviate a little bit.
Yep, that's okay.
I started teaching in North Andover in 1999 as a Title I literacy specialist. I'm not certified in reading, so I can't be called a reading teacher. At that time, Mary Ellen Jacobin was the personal narrative guru. We merged into the Leslie Collaborative stuff, where I had some amazing opportunities to be coached by some literacy specialists in the teaching of writing. We then merged into 6 traits, which for me provided some guidance for assessing writing, but I couldn't quite appreciate the teaching of writing from the 6 traits. I took the Lucy Calkins Homegrown Institute the first summer they offered it, and I have to tell you, it completely has changed my teaching. It has also changed my classroom. It has changed my kids. They love to write. We write every day. The first thing it did for me was it aligned me with the Common Core. I teach narrative writing, I teach information writing, I teach persuasive writing every single year. I now know what to teach for writing craft. I think you see a lot of teachers teach the same old lessons. Everybody teaches about what an ellipsis is. Everybody teaches how to use a simile. That's because they really don't know what else to teach. But when I took this class, it was eye-opening for me, and I left with a list of, this is what children need to know. It also enabled me to know how to teach it. My writer's workshop, my formatting changed, and it allowed me to better individualize the instruction. So I have a child who's basically a non-reader, but he can still participate in writer's workshop. I have a child who and I like to make that reading-writing equivalency. But I have a child who's reading above grade level, and you would imagine if you read above grade level, you probably write above grade level. The two are intermarried, and it's true. But I can provide appropriate instruction for both of those children. The Homegrown Institute opened an opportunity for me, and this is where I'm going to answer your question. Teaching with from the masters. So one of the books that I use, and every teacher will use different things just because we all have different experiences and we all know different books and we all own different books. But this is a well-loved one for me, Going Lobstering. This one works for me because I actually had the opportunity to go lobstering with the guy who wrote this book. He took my family out, and I explained to children that I can write this story. You might not be able to write this story, but I can write this story because I've done this. When I show them all the little pieces, and this one in particular is near and dear to my heart because I took several pictures, and I can show the children that in this particular illustration, this is exactly what the beach in Situate, where Jerry Pilata goes lobstering on his little dory, looks like. It makes it real. I had a wonderful experience this year. The day that Lorene happened to be in, I was using a text written by Mem Fox. It's called Winifred Gordon MacDonald Partridge, and it's about a little boy who asks a woman, "What is your memories?" And she's lost her memories, so she doesn't know. And he goes and he asks several older people in the neighborhood, "Well, what's your memory? What's your memory? What's your memory?" And you see that recurring language through the text. Well, that was the purpose of the lesson, using recurring language purposefully. I had a little boy come up to me after the lesson. He said to me, "Mrs. Boudreau, I'm just like Mem Fox. Listen to this." And he had one phrase that he repeated through his whole story. He understood by reading a Mem Fox text that you can use this kind of language purposefully. We talk all the time in the primary grades about including characters and setting in your story. Well, no one does it better than in Stella Luna. You gotta love it. In a warm and sultry forest far, far away, there once lived a mother fruit bat and her new baby. Well, here, right here, put the setting in your story when your story starts and include your characters right at the beginning. This is how the masters do it. Well, you all look pretty engaged. The children do too. Using the texts to show the children that this is what authors do and they too are authors brings it all to life. The other benefit for me from this Homegrown Institute, I've noticed a dramatic shift, an improvement, frankly, in my reading instruction. It's wonderful when I sit and I read a book to children and they all sit there and they all yell out, "Dialogue, internal thinking," bit by bit. The children are able to use that language that they learn in writing and see it when they're reading. It helps to promote that marriage. This program for me has invigorated my writing, has improved the children's writing dramatically. And I think the thing I like the most about it is that kids are excited to write every single day.
Thank you. So one of the other areas that we look at writing is in the argument writing. And again, I mentioned that, obviously Lynn and I were in the same school, and so the first year Lynn did the argument persuasive writing piece, and she said, "Come on, for a celebration." I said, "Sure," and I didn't know what they had written about. They actually wrote about what should be on the Thompson playground. It just so happened I had been working with the PTO about what a new playground should look like. So it was such an awesome opportunity for those kids to see that their writing had meaning and purpose, because copies of those went to the PTO and were shared with the PTO, and I was able to come back and bring that information back. And I'm going to let Lynch, you can talk a little more about that, and then about the other example that you had as well. So for kids to see that writing has meaning and it's not just something I'm like trudging through is huge, huge.
And so much of what Lorene has said and Em has said, I have to echo, because
I truly see this in the classroom, and it has been a joy to see it. I've been teaching almost 20 years now, most of which have been at the Thompson School, and to see that progression, and even not only in my students, but as you said, Anne, in myself. I was an English major in college, and so I wrote constantly, and I love writing, but I was never super excited about it when I was teaching it, because I was probably more frustrated, because as Anne said again, I just felt I didn't have a direct course. I was sometimes on course, but sometimes I felt off course, and I wanted so much to have something that would guide me in a much better way. And when I signed up for the Homegrown Institute, I felt I had found that, and I was excited about the books and to finally know that I had some direction. And it has been inspiring for me. And to tell the children and to teach the children that that writing is a craft, there's a purpose to it, and there's a joyful part of it. The benefits have been overwhelming. So to get back to the persuasive writing, so the children did write about their thesis statement was, we need more playground equipment at Thompson School. And they composed these wonderful, persuasive essays or letters to Lorene, thesis statement, and 3 solid arguments why they should, with examples, and their conclusion, their clincher at the end. And it was very effective. And another one that we did last year was in support of getting a buddy bench at Thompson School, which when our kindergarten teacher, Jenna Farian, brought the idea to us, it happened to be at the same time we were doing our persuasive writing unit. So we jumped right on that one, and we thought that would be a wonderful topic for them to write about. And they wrote about it. I wish I had them with me. I did save some of them. And as it turns out, their passion, their excitement, their desire to get that buddy bench at the Thompson School came to fruition, because as a result of that, but also some of the work of the other classes that supported that as well, we were able to get the buddy bench at Thompson School. So they saw the fruits of their labor, so to speak, and they realized that their writing could make a difference, and it truly had. Today we were writing about, or brainstorming, turning and talking to each other about a rule that they would each like to change at home. And of course, the ideas just flowed. And I always, and some of the ideas, were more than interesting. And I have to say, third graders are really opinionated. So of all the units that I teach, the 3 units, I should say, I probably enjoy the persuasive one the most, because I really get to know them and to see what's going on inside of them. And that whole risk factor, I think, is taken away with this program, and I'm not sure I can really explain it, except to say what I learned from Maggie Roberts, who was the consultant that taught me that year, is that if you can just take away 1 or 2 things from what I've taught you and implement that in your own writing, then you've succeeded with this. And I kind of adopted that philosophy the first year, especially when I was trying to make my way through the program. And that's what I said to the children. I said, I don't expect you to become masters this year, but I would hope that you would take those strategies that I'm teaching you and use them and implement them, and, as we say, write fast and furious. And I remember one student getting really angry with me. She's in 5th grade now. Really angry with me one day because we couldn't fit writing in that day. Something came up, an all-school meeting, or I don't know what it was, and Mrs. Crosby, we're not having writing today? What do you mean by that? And, I had to explain to her, but she was truly upset over the fact, because she loved to write, and she really represented so many of the other children. She was not the exception. And it's been wonderful to see that. And again, certainly I've brought mentor texts. I read this to my students today, my teacher for president, and all the reasons why this child who's going to a TV station or whatever, and writing about why his teacher has all those qualities that a president has, and why his teacher should become the next president. And this one was wonderful for narrative writing, Come On Rain. It had all of the elements and components of writing that you would hope a narrative piece of writing would have. And for informational writing, a story called Oh Rats, which is obviously information all about rats. And looking forward to using that. It is. It definitely is. But the last thing I did want to say, I mean, there's so much I could say. You know, these are, don't mind if I stand up for a sec, but part of what we do is we teach through demonstration. We teach through a lot of our own writing, student writing, turning and talking, but, you know, just doing anchor charts, as these are called. You know, so if the particular teaching point of the day is, you know, what can you do to hook that reader, that lead, to bring them into your writing, this is an anchor chart that can stay up in the classroom, that while you're working with other children, if a child isn't quite sure, what did Mrs. Crosby just say, they can refer to what we have written in the mini lesson. I mean, we have so many of them, we have to take them down after we complete each unit because there's simply not enough room in the classroom, but just different techniques and strategies that they can always refer to in their writing. And they use these, which is wonderful. And first I thought, are they
independence?
Yes,
So it's not
yes.
always a hand raised and waiting for the teacher to come over. The expectation is that you have tools in the classroom to use to become a more independent learner.
Right, exactly. And at first I was a little skeptical, would they even take a look at these? Would they bother to? But they do. They do. And every year I see it happening more and more with them. And with that also, and I'm trying not to monopolize the conversation, but now that we've been into the program for a few years, what I'm seeing is now my third graders were first graders when this started. And they're coming to me with the language and with the elements of persuasive and narrative and informational writing on a much simpler basis, obviously, but it's building every year, and hopefully my third graders will now have that firmer foundation when they go to fourth grade. I think the very last thing I wanted to point out is our celebrations, and Laureen has been at 2 of them, and Mr. Gilligan and Dr. Price came to our last one, and it was our narrative writing celebration. Because one of the things that we learned is, you know, writing is a process. You don't necessarily have to have a product, but the children love having a product. And as a teacher, I have to admit, I do too. So we produced, you know, our narrative writing. It took us a long time to do this and bring it to publication. But what we had at our celebration, which was right before Christmas break or a holiday break, was the children had written these, they'd illustrated these, and we had a museum walk, and we invited the administrators to come in, and also parents. Were parents in that day? I'm forgetting now. Or yes. And so they had a chance to walk around and view the writing. And the most fulfilling part of all of this was in each child's writing folder was a piece of paper, and on this paper, the reader, could write a comment, and the children themselves could write. That's what it was. The children in the classroom were going around in the museum walk as well, and they were, for the first time, reading what their peers had written. And I know you don't have time, but if you ever did have an opportunity to view the comments that they wrote, they were incredible because, again, they brought in that language that they had heard. And they weren't just parroting things that they had heard me say. They were saying them because they were so much a part of what we were doing. You know, I like how you told your story bit by bit. I enjoy the dialogue that you used, the descriptive language. You really kept in the moment when you were writing. And all of those things that we had talked about, they internalized and they complimented and celebrated each other's writing. And last year, for the first time, I didn't do it the first year of going through the program, but we did a similar thing with informational writing. And so the children are now fourth graders, and I went up to a few of them the other day and I said, do you still have your informational book that you wrote last year? Right away, the first 4 that I said, yes, we still have it. these were true keepsakes for them. And again, I would hope you would have an opportunity to look at these. But they took a subject that they were passionate about, or as we said, what do you feel that you're an expert in? And one thought, I'm an expert in football, and another one thought, yeah, track and field, and another one, I know everything there is to know about swimming, and this one, oh yeah, I can tell you everything about the strawberry poison dart frog. And and the subjects in the range were, it was incredible. But oops, they had a dedication, and they had a table of contents and an introduction, and they had chapters in their books. And for this one, the parents came in. And because it was so much reading, we just had groups of 4, and the parents of those children sat around and listened, and then we rotated if we had a little extra time. But the fact that the children kept these and were so proud of this, I think that's the thing, too, that I take away from all of this every year, is that the joy, the passion that they see in writing, they see the purpose, they love it. They're disappointed when we can't get to it on a certain day, and that does happen occasionally. They're knowing that they're becoming lifelong writers. They are, and they're authors even at this young age. So it's been inspiring, I think, for them just as much as it's been for me. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Excuse me, that's 3rd grade.
3rd grade, yes.
That is phenomenal. Yes. That is really awesome.
You should see what's happening in kindergarten through this program. It's
Actually,
incredible.
That's awesome.
We're kind of going a little out of order here, but I had a slide with people's names, and Diana Beckley, who's a kindergarten teacher at Atkinson, has been doing this, and Jen came with me to her class. Phenomenal.
Stunned.
The first year that we did it at Thompson, I remember bringing Hutch down at a parent event, and he was just blown away by what he saw in that kindergarten class and the change in writing. I mean, because kindergarten is such a year to make leaps and bounds as well, but really structured, intensive. The routines, the kids they know who their writing partners are, and I have notes on that. I won't go into all of that because obviously you can see the excitement. We could talk forever about all of this, but there's so many fabulous structures that support the children's learning, and you really see that progress. And I've been in Caroline's class, and Caroline shared, we did a professional learning group the 2 years that we did the Homegrown Institute, and at the end we shared writing, and Caroline had brought in a great project that had to do with information writing that year, and if she's able to speak about that a little bit, and then she has other pieces. But the funniest thing this year, one of the days I was in Caroline's class, walked in, and I forgot how you presented it, but you said to the kids, like, who am I a groupie of or whatever, and the kids were all like, Lucy Calkins. It was so funny.
They really do.
It was so funny.
Yeah, finally had to show a picture of who she was. She was just this, who is this Lucy lady? I'm going to echo a lot of what you've heard from my colleagues. Obviously, the enthusiasm that we all have, we're just bursting with, and our students have the same exact enthusiasm. It really goes hand in hand. I was thrilled to have the opportunity to take this writing program. I was floundering with writing instruction as a teacher. I do teach the 5th grade. There just wasn't a lot. It was boring. There wasn't a lot to go on. I am familiar with process writing. This is called process writing. It's not new. It's not newfangled. When I was getting my master's at Lesley in 1987, this was big. And I actually taught 1st grade in another district for a few years, using a very similar instruction method. Been in North Andover for about 14, 15 years, and just sort of grappling with whatever, was sort of the writing instruction of the day. When I went back it was like coming home when I went to this program, and now to have, this is for 1 unit, so this is just the narrative unit, to have a book full of really good mini lessons to sit and model and mentor and energize the kids to then go back and write. My students in 5th grade, I teach 2 sections of 5th grade because I team with another teacher and I do the writing for both classes. We write for close to an hour, probably 4 days a week. I will talk about the information in a moment. The first unit was the narrative unit. That's a really good, comfortable place to start. They're writing stories all of their own topic. And oh my goodness, I get to choose my own topic. They come in and I think I probably see it a little bit more at the 5th grade level. The students come in, and they haven't had this in the prior grade, so I'm really getting these kids brand new, or I have last year and this year. They're sort of very cautious, safe writers, and that makes their content not the most exciting.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
What you just said about the choice. So typically when we were teaching writing, we would give the students a prompt. Tell me what the best thing you did over the summer was. And some kids may have had a best thing that they did over the summer, but some kids might not have. We didn't give them any choice. And with this sort of writing workshop process, you're teaching a strategy. So instead of saying what's the best thing you did this summer, you might say something like, one way writers get started is to think about a really exciting time. That opens up just that. You're not narrowing it to that child about what they did this summer. This is a way to get started, and when you use those words, you're teaching a strategy that can be used over and over and over again. You're not teaching a prompt to what I did this summer. So that's
and it just takes it doesn't take long. It took me with my students coming into me who weren't familiar with this process in the previous year, a couple of years. Within about a week to 10 days, it's like, oh, I can just write. And these are writers' notebooks that they write in, where they're just jotting down ideas, starting possible stories. These are not finished products. This does not have to be perfect. We had the poet laureate came to our classroom last year. She walked in with one of these and said, I carry it around with me. When I see something, I write it down because that could develop into a story later on. And I make a list, make a sketch, find a picture, things like that. So I'll have these out for display with you, for you to look at. So that's sort of the narrative unit. I do publish books. They maybe have tried 8 to 10 different possible stories. They publish 1 or 2. They decide which of those will be the best, and then we work on technique and revision and spelling and all of that, and here are my finished products. That's narrative. Quickly for my persuasive unit, I do a lot of just warm up in persuasive unit. I think maybe that's when you guys stopped in, or we were about to. Letter to the principal, something you'd like to change, letter to parents. But then I follow Lucy Calkins' persuasive unit, which I don't have here, and a topic she suggests is, should there be chocolate milk served in the cafeteria? And she provides primary sources so that the children can learn to write text-based argument writing, which at 5th grade level, they're really ready for that. So we have pro and con primary sources. We put up news clips from news stations with that topic, and they're taking notes, and they've got sticky notes, and then they include that. The last unit, which is the information unit, I chose to do that unit last because we have just, and this is cross-curricular here, we have just finished the American Revolution. And so right now we're sort of doing steps of the American Revolution, then we really get into the Revolution. And I let the children then choose within the context of the American Revolution, what do they want to research more? It could be a person. It could be a battle. It could be, I've had some students just want to study women's role in the American Revolution. And so then I'm helping them pull sources. Last year, our final product, which is what I had on display there, I sort of I was trying to look for something different, and I went and bought a couple big bundles of poster board, and the kids did visual displays with the different sections in information writing. There was sort of an overview of the American Revolution. Then they went into their particular topic. Then they'd go off that topic onto a special interest connected to that topic, and they added some graphic design and things to that. It's phenomenal. The last thing I'll share with you, there's a lot, I could go on forever. After the narrative unit, I know it was new for the students. I actually gave my students a feedback form. This isn't something I just did for right now, because I did this back in November. And I went through and I pulled out a couple. And here's just a couple quotes from my 5th graders. I like that you can write about anything that's happened to you, because I really like to express my feelings and emotions of what's happening. And I feel like I can while writing about something that happened to me. I've changed as a writer because I feel like I can really express myself now, and I couldn't before. I really enjoy the Lucy Calkins program because I feel like it helps me really dig deep into my writing. I like that if we have an idea, we can quickly jot it down, and eventually we can turn it into a story. I also like that we don't have to write perfectly, she means at first, because if I have a good story idea, I like to flash draft it right away, and that's that fast and furious writing. And there are times where I've told students, you know what, please use a pen, not a pencil. And that's something Lucy recommends, because the perfectionists who want to make it all perfect, you want to get those ideas out. Just get going, on and on. I'll just read one more. I've changed in my writing because I used to write really dull stories, but now they're more interesting. I liked them because it tells me that, the writer's notebooks, that not every piece I do needs to be perfect the first time. So these students are really gravitating toward this. They like it. And I've had students say to me, I never really liked writing before, and I really like writing now. So,
thank you. I just want to mention, too, when Carolyn was talking about the chocolate milk piece, we had common assessments that we did here in writing, and when I was principal, I would look at the persuasive one, and I'm like, my skin would crawl as I looked at the older ones, because I'm like, we're telling them to write, and again, they're writing with no evidence. And, 4th or 5th graders should be writing with some kind of evidence, something to back up those opinions. But again, it was all this sort of, pulling it out of whatever I thought or felt, or, and it wasn't evidence-based for a persuasive piece. And at that grade, you really need to start that. So it's really exciting to see. And the kids really, really do enjoy that, because it's real. It's important to them. So the last piece, I just wanted to talk a little bit about writing workshop, and I'm not going to talk much because they've talked about a lot of things. I kind of gave an example of difference between a writing prompt and how we look at a strategy that can be used over and over again. Each teaching point has a what, which is a skill, a how, which is a strategy, and a why, which is a rationale, and that's taught to the students. We talked about mentor texts. They read it like a reader, then read it like a writer. They notice and name what the strategies are, and then they try it in their own writing, which is what our teachers are talking about. And then Lynn shared some of the charts. If you go into any of the classes where they're using workshop, you'll see that it's really the icons of a writer's workshop. You're going to see great mentor texts out. You're going to see charts. You're going to see kids working in partnerships. Those are the kind of things that you would look for. And something we're going to do this summer is do some work with principals on what you look for when you go into the classroom to see good work in a writer's workshop. So. And I would just like to thank all of you. As I said earlier, it has been a pleasure to go into the classrooms. It has been exciting for me to see the kids' responses, and just as exciting is to see the teachers' responses. So thank you.
Just one comment. When we talk about, when I use the language of consistent and rigorous curriculum, I think this is a fabulous example of that. We have 3 separate schools. We have kids using a consistent language, which prepares them well for the middle school and the high school. And I have to say, not only as watching, I spent a lot of time in all these classrooms, but my daughter does Lucy Calkins, and the rigor at which she has been writing has been phenomenal. I mean, she considers herself, when I ask her what she wants to be, she wants to be an author. And I directly tie it to the fact that starting in 3rd grade on a consistent basis, she's been writing almost every day. And so when we think about consistent and rigorous, this is what we're talking about. And the last thing I really like about this program is it's about all kids. And I truly believe that this is an inclusive process, that no matter where you are, no matter what specific accommodations, modifications you need, you can access this. And this is why I'm very excited to have this be our first major initiative at the elementary school, because not only do I think it will improve the writing, I know it will, but I really believe it will be a a model for what we can do with reading. It'll be a model for what we can do with math as we move forward. And I think that's really important in this district, is that we do consistent, but that we also focus on making sure that we have a rigorous curriculum. And this is a perfect example of that. And what I've seen these kids produce, you'd be blown away with. I mean, from kindergarten to 5th grade. And imagine if your kids started in kindergarten. I mean, that's the part that as we do this next year, it's going to be kindergarten through 5th grade. So in 4 short years, where you're going to be able to be with those kids is going to be very different. Thompson's been doing some more of that, and you've seen the fruits of that labor. So I think this is an incredible model to start with, and it's really why the decision that we've made as a team to have this be the first major elementary school initiative.
And I would, in addition to the rigor, I would just add, the day Dr. Price and I went and been in both their classrooms, but the day we walked into Lynn Crosby's classroom, I was so impressed with the production, but what really struck me the most is, I know most of the kids at the Thompson School because my son's a 2nd grader there. What struck me the most was how proud the kids were and how much they accosted Dr. Price and myself saying, please read mine first. And this was from a range of children, though, from the best writers in the classroom who are working to get better and having that rigor, to kids before would never, ever want you to read anything they wrote.
And the other part of that was watching the kids read each other's writing. And I remember reading probably one of the kids who had the most in-depth piece, and I wrote to her, but reading the other kids' comments, you inspired me to write like you. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
That was powerful. That another kid, you inspired me to increase my details in my story, that they were inspiring one another to increase their...
And I've heard that so much. I'm big on, or a proponent of, I should say, sharing students' writing, obviously, through celebrations, but also almost, maybe several times a week. So if they're writing, we take time to come on the rug and share what we've written. And we asked, I asked them one time, what are the reasons that we share our writing? And of course, they did conclude that one of the reasons is so that we can learn from each other. And they do. And someone else said that very same comment last year when they were listening to one of the better writers or more skilled writers in the classroom read their writing. They said that, and that was so. It was said so purely and so innocently, like you really did. And honestly, you did inspire me. And because they see the positives of all of that writing, and they want to become that. They want to be an author like that. So again, it inspires them to get even better and better in their skill.
And when you talk about sharing student writing, the one other thing I'm really excited is the document cameras as part of the model classroom are going to be an amazing resource. You have one, and being able to take a kid's piece of writing and just throw it up so that all the kids can see it. I'm just so excited that these two are coming at the same time, because actually the synergy is fantastic.
I agree.
At this time, I'd like to wrap up with this concluding slide. And I know it's getting late, but I would like to really, if we could just take 3 minutes after this to do that walk, just 3 minutes only, and if you can only look at one piece, just to get a sense of this, because it's a game changer, and it's really special. But as you look out, we've really spent a lot of time with the visioning, looking at the entry plan and looking at the finances to move forward. And this is really a 5-year plan, with writing year 1, the NAM science year 1, the math planning, as we described earlier, taking place, the ELL planning. Writing year 2 will be going very strong in 17-18. The same with the science. That will be the year where we'll recommend the mathematics based on that work. ELL, that will be really year 1 based on the recommendations as we discussed before. And then we start really focusing in on the reading planning and the science planning, which brings us out to 18, 19, 19, 20, and then 2021. And you can see the progression of how that works, because one of the things in order to, these steps to bring consistency is we have to really do things well. And we have to continue, and you'll see the social studies planning a little bit out. But I have to say, the excitement to be able to have a plan that's going to be sustainable, that's taking us in a direction that we can bring back consistency, so that, especially at the elementary schools, it doesn't matter what school you go to, and channeling Jen or Jim Marini, I mean, he used to say it all the time, so that a North Andover elementary education is a North Andover education. And, these are really concrete steps heading in that direction. And I really appreciate the teachers coming here tonight to give this testimony around the work they did, because one thing you might not know about these three and many others in the district is, besides professional development time, despite collaboration time, despite early release time, these guys spend an incredible amount of time in the summer, on the weekends, in their homes late at night, working on this. And we're lucky to have people like this in North Andover.
So this is wonderful to listen to, and I could listen to it all day, so I appreciate you being here. And I think, probably 14, 15 hours after your day started to still be this enthusiastic about writing. And having taught writing, I know that's not always the case, so it's fabulous to listen to. And I do think that this is a great program, and I think that the point about consistency and just providing the resources and the anchor examples and so on, that you're not having to build everything from scratch as you're going through, but you can focus a lot on the teaching and working with students. And there is so much time spent, but when you have all those resources, what a value that is to you and to your teaching. So I'm very excited about this. I think it's fantastic.
The most interesting thing that was said tonight, I think, is what you said, Lorraine, about writing as a craft. I think this is just a whole different way of looking at writing. It's like teaching a skill. It's like a sport, right? Lacrosse or field hockey. Students do that all the time. They start when they're in second grade playing basketball, and they play it through high school or college. This is taking an academic approach, an academic issue, and doing the same thing. So that, to me, I think is really exciting. And the other part is what you were saying about strategies, not the focus, giving them the tools they need to do it themselves. Right. So I think this is really interesting, and it provides a framework to put all kinds of other pieces in there, like the science, technology, math, all of that fit right in. So it's pretty interesting. I think this is a great idea. I should come and take some classes on writing. I could certainly use some skill building.
But I'm certain any one of these teachers, and I know I have others as well, who would be more than happy to have you come in and see. And really, it's something to see.
Yeah.
It really is. So.
That's it.
I just want to say, I think this is fantastic, and thank you so much for being here. And as Mrs. Warren said, this is probably hour 15, 16 for you guys. So I really appreciate, again, your enthusiasm. I was thinking back to when I was in school, and most of my stamina in writing was also for 45 to 60 minutes of writing every day, and that was usually I will not talk in class. So I really appreciate the different direction that we're taking now. It seems a lot more insightful. But I love just the freedom of ideas and that whole, and I think you all kind of said it, that it doesn't have to be perfect. We're writing, we're moving, we're starting that process, and I just think that's fantastic. So many kids, I think, struggle with trying to make sure it's perfect, and I think somebody mentioned, like doing it in pen so that, it's you can't fix it, it's just put it in and keep going, and I love that. I know my
Kindergarten in the past.
Do they really?
Yeah, which is a real shift when we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And there's a saying, when you think you're done, you've just begun. And we had that on our cake at the end of one of our groups. But it's never over. It doesn't have to be perfect. And when I talk about what you should see in a writer's workshop, you should see student work displayed. That's not all the end product. It's the process.
Yeah,
So.
That's great. And I love when we brought in curriculum coordinators, I think 2-3 years ago, and really kind of started to just
This is a year and a half in.
This is a year. It's
actually a year and a half in.
But even now, to really just see the 5-year plan and know where we're going, I commend everybody. I mean, I love it, and I think that this is really great, and I hope that all of our teachers are excited about this. I know as a parent how exciting this is, and so I just want to again thank you for being here and the dedication that you have and the sharing of your work, and you're obviously so excited about it, and I know our students are as well, so thank you again.
Will this,
Go ahead, sorry.
will this also be implemented this year in the middle school too for the writing? We have purchased the kits for the middle school. They aren't here yet. I'm waiting every day for them to arrive. Dr. McQuaid and I have been talking about that. We're talking about how to roll it out. Obviously, it's a little different. You have fewer teachers who would be teaching this. Where at the elementary level, it's all the teachers. But we've been in discussions and have actually talked to some of the teachers. There are 2 teachers who took the training a couple of years ago, 2 middle school teachers who've done that as well. So is it we don't have enough resources, or what can we do to help?
No, I think it was just part of the process of making the decision to continue at K through 8, that it's something that people felt was a good thing to do. So, and rather than wait even till next year, we're getting those kids in their hands so they can start to work with them this spring and over the summer and look at how they're going to start to roll that out at the middle school as well. Yeah.
So let me go back to this chart, right? So when I started this job in 2008, I started looking for that chart and I never could find one.
Well, I've seen a lot over the years in strategic plans and different pieces.
Well, I found an old one, a North Andover old one.
Yeah.
And was told, no, we don't do that anymore. That's not what we don't. That's not what we do anymore. So I'm glad to see it's back. It makes me feel good.
One thing I did want to.
Quick comment. I'm excited to be focusing on teaching and learning again now that the budget is disposed of, and the presentations just again it just showed how exciting our staff and our team are and being able to deliver this. I do want to be careful that are we sure we're not overextending on what we want to accomplish this year, because this truly has to be sustainable and we have to properly fund this in order to work. So I guess the question is, if we flesh out this year over year, it would be very helpful to see what the annual needs will be, so we can be sure to keep our eye on that in the event that the implemented funding sources don't materialize.
That's certainly a key, Brian, and it's a very good point. It's certainly, especially with any curriculum, about going, not only revisions, but evaluating along the way how things are going.
Yes.
But I will say we were very thoughtful. I mean, there is need, and I want to look at my elementary school colleagues here, there is need for consistency in all of these areas. I'm not, and in part of me would like to do all 5 by the fall, which is not, right. But the idea.
This is like watching a house being built. It's really exciting knowing that the foundation's being poured, the walls being put up, and it's an exciting journey. I don't misinterpret my comments on how exciting that this is and how much this is really going to help us. It's absolutely, it needs to be done. It's long overdue. I just want to make sure we properly support this to make sure at the end of 2021 we have what we thought we were going to build.
That's our hope, and the real thought here was one major subject area a year, and that was asking a lot of our elementary school teachers, but anything more than that was frankly undoable. But that's really where our plan is one a year at the elementary school level. And I do have to say, in terms of the funding around curricular resources, we've been spending a huge amount of time trying to figure out how to increase our Medicaid reimbursement. There is a lot of motivation in this district to get that number up, and I am very confident that we will have the funding to support this going forward. Lots of paperwork that was not filled out is currently being filled out vigorously by everyone in the district, because there's just incredible incentive to understand if we can get Medicaid paperwork in, we can do this. That seems well worth it to us.
So this is a great plan. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a great plan, and I'm very excited to see it, as are you, Stan. But I'm wondering, what will be in place to ensure that it is being implemented consistently in the district?
Well, I think one of the big keys is this summer is us working with the elementary principals, because, some of this will be new to them, or newer, and the ability to educate them on the key components of this, because they're the ones who we have to train. So when they're going into the classrooms and they're getting in there through their walkthroughs and we're going around schools, they know what to look for, as we go through. I think that's one key component of it. And I think the other piece is, it's doable. It's doable in the sense, as Dr. Price pointed out, with the year by year, really thought out, let's not try to do everything at once. Let's do something in the writing with already half the elementary teachers having some training seemed like really a logical place to start and build that foundation. And I have to tell you, as someone who's back in school, I can't think of any skill more important than writing. Well, there's probably a few but to be career and college ready, when I talk to kids who go to college, what's the thing they struggle with most or they procrastinate the most? They do well in class, they can do well in discussions, they can do well taking a test. But when they have papers due,
What do superintendents procrastinate?
And assistant superintendents. Cindy's on us on the newsletter the day before it has to go out.
So, Dr. Price, is this an example? Have we heard examples tonight of sort of the growth mindset? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part that this really, I was thinking the same thing, Stan. I mean, this idea of you don't get it right the first time and you keep getting it. And that is, there's so much research with DWEC about that being the most important thing for kids to learn. Resiliency, failure, getting it right over time. I mean, it works with all that we have been talking about in terms as we think about preparing these kids, and especially as we think about the fact that we are preparing kids for jobs that we can't even imagine. So being able to get the habits of mind to allow them to do that is so important.
And to be able to pour your ideas out, I mean, because students, adults, all ages, are full of these ideas. And I have 2 young adult children of my own in their 20s who are going through job searches, things like that. The number of revisions and in job letters, emails, pour it all out. Your first try doesn't have to be what you're sending. Get it out. And that's what so much of this is. What's good? What should you take out? What should you reorder? What should be added in here? How can you make this stronger? Things like that. So,
well, and for those examples, persuasive writing, they could probably use your teaching materials for writing those letters, right? Because that's what they're trying to do.
Absolutely.
That's persuasive writing if there ever was in here.
And if I might add, too, on the same wavelength as what you were saying too, about nothing has to be perfect all the time. One of the best ways to demonstrate that is by the teacher writing and demonstrating his or her own writing on chart paper. And let me see, because that's a part of modeling, that's the part of teaching in the whole process of it. And oftentimes I struggle to come up. I don't prepare it. It's on, it's off the cuff and whatever comes to my mind, and I'm writing, and then I don't like the way that sounds, and I go back and I cross out, and at the end it's just a messy piece of chart paper. That's my sloppy copy, but it's real to them. Then they really truly understand that I didn't create something perfectly from the start.
Will we be able to ensure that next year that all teachers in the same grade levels, at least during the school day, will have common planning time to be able to sit down with their writing that they're working on and be able to assess together and have those conversations?
So one of the things we've been working hard at is, with the early release, we have the ability to do that much more in a way of design rather than by accident or depending on the creativity of the principal. But one of the things that we're certainly principals try to do, and we've been very successful in some of the buildings, and we're working with the other principals, is planning of the schedule. So that people do have common time off as well.
So it's a yes for common planning time?
Well, I think that, I also think that the other thing is that the creation of the library media specialist is going to create an extra kind of special, which allows us to have more time for common planning time. It's something we've talked a lot with the elementary school principals about, and they're working very hard on this scheduling component. So it is a priority. If I don't want to sit here and guarantee it, but I will tell you that the principals will be spending the spring trying to figure it out. And there is an additional resource that we haven't had in the past, which is the library media specialist will be in every school on a much more consistent basis.
Yep.
Which creates opportunities.
And ties into research and
Yeah, all of
writing.
and all the other good stuff they bring.
So we're going to work really hard.
Yeah, we're working really hard on it.
Great, thank you.
So I don't know if you want to do the walk or if you want to close out with public comment and then take a minute to look.
Why don't we do it that way?
I was going to suggest, we've got our next item is the Crest annual budget review, which I think is, probably if we have Mr. Limpert, but if we can hold him to a minute.
No, I can do this in a minute. I really can. I can do this.
Start the watch.
We'll start the
It's like Mr. Gillining to 10.
So this is only for your information. I would say read it. It's got some great information in it. This is the management of this organization is just excellent. They're doing a wonderful job, and I think they're looking to expand their services, so we will have more opportunities in the future. As you might expect, every year their costs go up slightly, a couple of % a year, and they haven't set the new prices, but it'll probably go up a little bit. And just read this, and if you have any questions, let me know.
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
So it looks like we're the fourth largest source of revenue for them. Do we have a breakdown of what resources we're using?
I think we can try to get that.
I'll bring that to you, Brian. I mean, we when we look at our out-of-district costs, we use our collaboratives a lot more than a lot of districts do, which is actually a cost-efficient approach to supporting students. So it's something we've noticed in our special ed analysis is that we use collaboratives more than a lot of other districts do. Collaboratives are much more cost-efficient than other 766 schools.
That's great. And does that give us an opportunity to help formulate what services they're looking to build out that might be beneficial to us?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can get back to you.
Great, thank you.
All right. So we'll now just move on to public comment, if there's any. Anybody from the
Boy Scouts?
Thank you, Boy
Troop
Scouts.
32 or 82 or 87?
You're logging hours.
You guys did good.
You guys didn't fight about anything.
So
They needed something to duke out.
yeah. You should have told us that. We would have started a fight. Next time, tell us what we're supposed to do, and we'll try to do it. Okay.
All right.
I'm glad you guys came.
All right. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning? We'll do roll call. Mr.
Yes.
Warren, Mr. Limpert,
Aye.
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Yes. Myself is yes. We are adjourned. Thank you.